go off to the side there and go this way. Okay, I'll bring you.
Hi, Lauren. I'm good. How are you? Hopefully okay stuff.
Oh yeah, really good. Yeah. Hey, Purdue did pretty good the other day.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can kind of catch a seat and we can get this meeting started. So we still got a few people on the hallway. If they can kind of make their way in, find a seat. All right, let's get started. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I know it's inconvenient to come out and take time out of your night to get an update on the water system and what's going on with PID, but we really, really appreciate it. Is that better? Thank you. I got to pull it up here a little bit here. So first of all, I want to say that we're not going to have every answer for you tonight. There's a, I know, we wish we had every answer for you tonight. What we're dealing with is an extremely complicated and large problem that we're facing. And we're going to go through kind of the details of what we've accomplished, what we're dealt, and then walk through what a draft recovery plan of the water system is, and then give you guys some timelines and some idea of what to look forward to going into the future. I want to thank everybody from the community for the support that you guys have given us through this time. I know it's not easy. I know it's frustrating to not be able to drink your water, not be able to shower when you want to and in the temperature you want, not being able to boil the water. I understand the frustration, and I truly, truly want to thank you for your support and your patience with us through this time. I also want to thank the staff of PID for being so dedicated to this district, to putting some of their personal needs aside to come out and work on a daily basis. Some people didn't take a day off of work for 30 to 60 days after the fire. 30 of the 36 employees lost their homes. So they had personal issues they were dealing with, but they were still at work, making sure, trying to recover the system the best way possible. So I want to say thank you to that. I also want to thank our partners, our federal partners, FEMA, EPA, for all their support and help, our state partners, Department of Drinking Water, Cal OES, all of the other people who have stepped up to the plate. We have a PhD from Purdue that's been with us almost since day one to help us with the technical problems, the issues, supporting us, giving us guidance to move forward. So I want to thank them and give them a round of applause. Okay, let's get into today's agenda. So tonight's agenda, we're going to talk about who is PID, just so that everybody knows who we are, to differentiate us from PG&E or from some of the other utilities that you might have seen around town. An overview of the damage caused by the campfire, problems with the water system, what is needed to properly restore the system, challenges, our draft recovery plan that seems to change almost on a daily basis based on the knowledge that we're receiving back from our testing, the next steps, and then we're going to open up for questions and comments. And we're going to try to keep it where we have a lot of time, because I know there's a lot of questions out there that people have that want to be, that they want to ask, so we want to make sure that there's plenty of time for that. So who is PID? PID was formed in 1916 by farmers who decided to hydromine dirt or mud off the side of the hill and create Magalia Reservoir and divert water down through Paradise to become the apple farming capital of California. We are a special district, so we are a government agency that was formed by the state of California. We have 5 elected board members that are elected from divisions. The reason why we have divisions is because it was a farming community. So we wanted to they wanted to make sure that certain areas that had better soil didn't have all of the control over the district and divert more water to their area, so they split it up so that each division had representation within the community. And the difference between us and maybe the town is that we are almost 100% revenue based by rates. So we are a government agency that acts really like a business, but our business is the community and it's run by the community. So it's very, we're a small business of Paradise, even though we're a government agency. So with the fire and with the destruction, that was one of the issues, is that we lost all of our customer base. We lost all of our revenue that we had planned on for that. And so we're having to recover a system, but we're also dealing with the revenue side of things too. So we all know this picture. This is what happened on November 8th. This was the worst day PID ever experienced. The fire came through, and if you look at this map here, the light blue is by noon is how fast that fire blew through here. So as a district, what happened was that fire blew through so fast that we couldn't keep up with the water demands from each one of those houses that was being destroyed as that fire came through. Our treatment plant staff stayed all the way through the fire, keeping water moving through the system. As they heard that fire was coming through, they turned it up as hard as they could and kept as much water in the system as they could, but it still couldn't keep up with the demands that were being required from all those services that were melted or broken and shooting off into the fire. Just another picture. And then the burn structure map. I think we've all seen this, where it's this big red blob of burnt structures, which those are all, every one of those structures that are burned is a service line of the district. What neighborhoods look like, what the businesses look like. And then this map here is a kind of a looking at that burnt structure. And what you can see is in there's a few spots of black. Those are homes that are still standing. Those are homes that are our customers, that we want to serve water to. So that creates difficulties in us trying to get water back into the system or trying to fix the system, because we have a smattering of homes that are still standing that we want to make sure that they have water to them. There was a lot of people that were in the evacuation order was lifted, had no other place to go except for their home. And we made a priority for us as a district to get water to those homes. By April 1st, we made a priority that each standing home would have water to their meter, and we got it. We beat that expectation. So during the fire, PID's response was providing water for firefighting. And what we did was, on the Saturday after the fire, we had crews that came up and they basically knuckled down the system or shut the system down, except for a pipeline from Wagstaff on Skyway down to about a little above Town Hall. And that was to get water back into the hydrants. We knew that the town was still not out of the woods from additional fires. And it happened that night there was structure fires that the Cal Fire had the ability to go and get water off those hydrants and be able to save whatever structures were still there. But what we did was we shut the whole system down. By shutting the whole system down, we have over 173 miles of pipe that we shut down. And we have a gravity-fed system that starts from the top to the bottom. So it's not like you can just go flip the switch now that your system's shut down and fill it all back up. It takes a long, tedious process to get water back into the system. So by doing that, we had to basically turn segment by segment by segment on of water to each one of those pipes. And we were trying to get water down to the town, again, for firefighting purposes, but to get people water to their structures so that they could flush toilets and live in their houses that were still standing. That took about 2.5 months of a long, tedious process of working weekends and working tons and tons of overtime from our crews. So that was our first initial response to the fire, was to actually get water back into the system. We then did a damage assessment by why we were doing this process. One of the big damaged items from the fire was our B-res. Our B-res is our largest treated water storage tank, but it's a hyperline tank that sits above ground. The fire came in and burnt that tank and drained the tank. Through the fire also, all of the other steel storage tanks that actually survived the fire drained themselves also. So we had a dry system from that standpoint. In our distribution system, there's many, many types of pipes. This district was built in over a 70-year period of piping. So there's all kinds of different pipes in there. One of our biggest types of pipes is steel pipe. We have gone through a pipe replacement project in the last 15 years to putting in plastic pipes to replace those steel pipes. And what you'll find out later in the presentation is that could be an issue with contamination too. That those plastic pipes that were the new pipes that we were feeling good about putting those in could have been one of the reasons that led to some of the contamination. But what we've also seen is that there's kind of no rhyme or reason to some of the contamination. We have 7 pressure zones and 5 storage tanks. And so we have A through F pressure zones, but B is where the water actually comes into the system. And then we pump it back up to A, but from B to the bottom is all gravity fed. So it's a great system when you have clean, drinkable water, and it's a really crappy system when you have contamination. And the reason why is all of the water goes from top to bottom. So if you're thinking about the analogy is cleaning your driveway, you don't start at the bottom and clean up. You start at the top and clean down because all that dirt goes from the top to the bottom. Very similar to our system. Some pictures of some damaged service connections. When we went out, looked at some of the properties out there, some of our meters, we find them even just popped off, that the heat of the fire just actually popped the meter all the way off the service. The meter boxes melted completely into the service. Some services, we couldn't even tell what they were. So extreme damage to our distribution system. Chemical contamination. So after we got the system up and pressurized, I'm going to take one step back, okay? When the fire happened, we initially put out a boil order notice because we didn't know the extent of the damage, but we knew that we had open areas of the system that was exposed to the atmosphere. And so we didn't know what was in there. So we put out a boil order notice, which is common under drinking water's requirements. But We also had been doing research and knew of one other district out there that had a fire that went through a year ago and had contamination of what we thought was benzene, or what they call VOCs, in the system. And at the time, we knew our system depressurized. We knew there was heat. We knew there was plastics. And so we decided as a district to be extremely cautious and to change our order from a boil order to a do not drink, do not boil. And that was to protect the public health. We had no idea at the time if there was VOCs or benzene or anything in the system. But we wanted to make sure that if there was those contaminants in there, that we were out in front of it to make sure that our public was safe and that they had healthy drinking water and that they could make a decision on their own. So we wanted to make sure that we were very, very cautious with our do not drink, do not boil order, and that was before we found any VOCs. Once we repressurized the system, we were able to go then and then test for VOCs. And to test for VOCs, what you have to do is, well, I'll give you the analogy of what our system the damage of our system is. The treatment plant is like the heart, right? And the heart is clean, it's pumping good blood, it is as good as anything. But we think all of our veins are pretty good, but what we're finding is contamination is capillaries. So your capillaries are the ones that are actually contaminating your blood, because your blood's clean, it's your infrastructure that's contaminated. It's very similar with our district. Is what we're finding is that those service lines that broke and burnt is where the contamination came from. So we have 10,500 service lines that we have potential contamination in. So what we did was we started testing for that, and immediately we found that there were VOCs, volatile organic compounds, in our system. And we didn't know why, or we knew why, but we didn't know why each one was in a particular area. So we started trying to figure out if there was a pattern here, to figure out if we could kind of isolate one zone or one area and lift it on the other area. So we started taking more samples. And to take a sample, what you have to do is you have to allow the pipe to contaminate the water. So it takes, what we read was it takes 72 hours of water being stagnant in a pipe. And then what you do is you then come and take a first draw of that pipe, so that 72 hours allows that VOC to leach back into that, to leach the contaminant into the water. You take a sample, and then that sample takes, on a rush service, 5 days to get back. So for us to find out if there's contamination in that service line, it takes 8 days. So it's not a fast process. It's a very slow, tedious process. So for us to get results back, it took quite a long time. So as we started kind of formulating ideas of where we wanted to look for these contaminants, well, you formulated a plan and you get a plan going, well, you still got at least 8 days before you know if your plan had any validity or not. And what we've seen is it's random. We expect to see VOCs in certain areas and we see no detects, and we expect to see no detects in some areas and we're seeing detects. Or you have a service line that gets a really high reading for a VOC in one, and the neighbor next to it has nothing. So there's just a randomness. But that helped us create our plan. We understood what we had to do, and it was big. We understood that we had to go out and basically test every service line and every main line in the district to make sure that we could guarantee to our customers that the water was safe to drink, and safe to drink for a long period of time. And this is not going to be a quick fix. It's a long-term result that we're looking for. So currently we've taken approximately 400 samples within the district. 36% of those samples tested positive for contaminants. So we're at a 36% level of contamination within the district. And some of those samples are on hydrants, some of those samples are on service lines, and some of those samples we try to get mainline water. out of. And you're going to hear a lot about benzene. Benzene is one contaminant of a full VOC. VOC is the volatile organic compound, and you can test for up to 65, I believe, constituents within a VOC sample. Benzene is just one of those. We're looking right now, our stance right now is to look at the full VOC sampling to make sure that we're not letting something out there that we come back in a couple years or 10 years or 20 years and go, well, why don't you look at that? If we find a pattern that benzene is the common constituent in the VOC testing, then we might just go with straight benzene at that time. But until we get full confidence that that is the case, the district stance right now is to test for full VOCs to make sure that we're not letting something out there to you guys as public that we didn't know. Challenges. The size of the problem. So I talked about another district that had this issue, Santa Rosa, who had benzene discovered in their system. Their service lines that they found benzene in were 350 service lines. We have 10,500. So they might have been the first, but we are by far the biggest. But we've learned a lot from them. They did a lot of studying for us. They taught us a lot about that. But it's hard to compare their issue with our issue because of the enormity of the issue. So where they were able to do a lot of stuff kind of in-house, we're going to have to look at on the out to get help, to bring in forces to help us get through this. But I think that we have a really good plan to get through this. And we have really good, not only in-house personnel to manage this, but we found some outstanding outside personnel and consultants to help us get through this. We're trying to isolate the contamination. So our first, when we go out and we sample and we find that there's the contamination within a service line, we're looking to isolate that, to shut it off, to get it away from the system and move on. Or if there's a quick replace, we can quickly replace it, but we're not going to spin our wheels trying to replace it. We're trying to get the system cleared as quickly as possible so that you guys have potable water coming back to your homes or rebuild or for your trailers to bring up to your property. So our number one goal is speed, to get this thing cleared as quickly as possible. And there's going to be some that you're going to just go, we'll figure that out later. We're going to cut that contamination out of the system, and then we'll come back and fix it later. And there might be homes on that, and they might have temporary water for a little bit longer than others, because we want to make sure that we're getting through the system as fast as we can so that people at the top and the bottom get potable water service back to their meter as quickly as possible. We have financial issues that we're working through. We have an ask for the state to help bridge the gap for 3 years for our revenue to help the district get through this time period where we're not going to have any customers or very few customers, and to be able for us to retool our business plan. And we have a draft recovery plan. So the draft recovery plan, which is still in a draft form, it's still being worked through, is to test, isolate, and replace. Those are the three main things of the plan. I know there's been talks about tanks and kind of temporary water, which will happen, but what we're trying to do actually is go even faster than that, to try to implement this testing so that we can actually get people back in potable water even before a tank would even be available to that person. There's other people that are going to have tanks that are going to be on site that will service. We're looking to bring in a tank or a fill station in town that is PID water, so that we are delivering PID water to those tanks and to those individual homes. But right now, that is our plan. The plan starts at the top of the system and moves down. And we're going to be looking for an RFP for support to get a contractor in here to do a lot of the legwork. PID personnel will become basically managers of personnel at that time. As we're moving down, we're going to look for as many bodies as we can to get this thing accomplished as quickly as we can. And then we're going to be sending samples out to as many labs as we can find in Northern California to get samples returned back as quickly as we can. That's kind of the overview of our plan at this point. I just want to let you know too, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, this is our first meeting, but it's not going to be our last. We're gonna have these type of meetings to get you guys up to date so you guys understand what's happening out there, the progress we're making, the hurdles that we're having to jump through, and we're hoping to find efficiencies through this plan. No one's ever had to do this in the past, so there's not that game book or that game plan that we can kind of go back and go, oh, yeah, these guys did this 2 years ago. Let's just recreate theirs. We're having to recreate the plan right now. But the plan, I think, is a good plan, and we've done a lot of due diligence. It's taken a long time, but the reason why it's taken a long time is because we want to make sure this is the plan, and when we implement the plan, we're not going back 6 months later and going, oh, we better scrap that. Let's go back and let's try something different. You know, we want to make sure this plan is the right plan to clear the system so that when we go through and we implement this plan, it's going to be efficient, it's going to happen, and that we're going to have this system back up and running as quickly as possible. So next steps. We're going to have, for the individuals that need water tanks, we're going to have water tank registration for those individuals so that we know how many people are in the house, that there's going to be a release to put a tank on the house, and that we just have the information so that we can contact the person, get the tank set, know where it's going to go, kind of have the logistics behind that. We're also going to have a sign-up sheet out there for updates. We're going to really push out updates constantly through email and then on our website. So keep checking the website for email or for updates, and we're going to continue to update the progress of this. And then when we get to milestones, we're going to have meetings just like this. We're going to have times where we're going to come in and we're going to show you what we've accomplished and give you a new update on where we're going. I know there's a lot of questions out there, and I'm gonna open it up here in a minute. But we are dedicated to this town. We're dedicated to the town of Paradise and the citizens to make sure this town can rebuild and rebuild quickly, and that businesses can come back and start up, and so that we can get back to rebuilding Paradise. There's a lot of people that have put in their own systems. They put in their own tanks, filter systems. PID can't recommend that. We're not in the business of that. So when you ask us what we should do, and we kind of hold to our do not drink, do not boil, that's our order out there. And you know, I know that others out there have kind of promised those, and so we can't reliably tell you which way to go upon that other than our current order. So our current order is the one that's still in place, is the do not drink and do not boil. We're working with our partners at the health department and with Purdue to come up with help and support for individual homeowners out there going forward with the contamination. But we're dedicated to this town, and we're dedicated to this system, and we feel like there's a really good opportunity that we're going to find efficiencies within this plan to move this plan forward, to expedite the clearing of the contamination. Right now, we still have a timeline right now of 2 to 2.5 years of full clearing of the system. But we're going to look at prioritizing other areas of the system to make sure that we're looking at people that are standing homes, people that have an opportunity to come back to their property. We're going to look at those to make sure that those are prioritized or prioritized to make sure that we're focusing on those areas first, and then kind of looking at the outskirts, the areas that maybe don't have any standing homes on it, as lower priority at that point. So at this point, we have Jim Ladrini, who is up here. He's the distribution superintendent. He had a lot of work into this plan, and developing the plan and understanding the plan, working with Sammy Cater and Waterworks engineers to refine the plan. Andrew from Purdue is up here to help. He helped us with a lot of the health concerns, understanding the complexities of the contamination. And so what we're going to do is kind of open it up for questions. We have 2 microphones here, and we'll have some moderators that can help answer the questions. And then we're going to open it up to this panel here to help maybe answer those questions for you. So thank you.
Hi. So in the paper, there was a mention that the contamination could possibly be associated to the meters. Could you speak on that, please?
Yes. So there is a theory behind that. We had all plastic meters within the district, and when those plastic meters heated up, the plastic itself off-gassed the VOC. When the system depressurized, it creates a vacuum. That vacuum sucks in those contaminants, and then I'm gonna go to you if I'm saying something wrong, as those contaminants actually leach. They actually go into the pipe itself. So there was some theory, and we know that there's some of the contaminants we can pretty much guarantee that they came from some of the plastic meters themselves. But there's other things out there that could have created the contamination itself also. Does that answer your question?
Stand. Thank you. I've got a question about the replacement of the water meters. We were reading on your website that we've got until December 31st of 2020 to have a cap of $500 to replace a water meter. Is that correct?
Yeah. So if you continue the readiness to serve charge, then there will be no cost.
Understood.
If you pull the meter, if you decide to disconnect, what our policy states is that we basically go out and pull that meter out of the ground. The cost to put that meter back in is time and materials, capped at $500.
Understood. But it's I guess it's a multifaceted question actually, because our choice is to either pay was it $21.49 a month, and we don't really have a timeline knowing when there will be potable water. So basically it's paying month after month out of our pocket with no certainty of having water or when we'll have water. So the expense will add up month after month, or wait and put in the meter when there is water, if there's water before December 2020. If the projected timeline is 2 to 3 years, then why put a deadline of December of 2020 versus having a deadline, say, once we know there's good potable water to actually buy?
That's a great point. That deadline was established before we had any idea of the complexity of what we had encountered and how long it would take.
Okay.
So that deadline was put into there with the thought that there would be probably an extension if there was no potable water by the end of that deadline. So it was put in place by the board before we really understood the complexity. So we can bring that back to the board for an extension or just for a clarification that if there's potable water, if there's no potable water then we should be extending
Yeah, that would be
out.
very helpful. I'm sure for anybody in here that is trying to figure out which way to go with,
Sure.
paying without by the month
Yeah,
versus saying, well, okay, how much time do we have?
right.
So,
Yeah, and we don't want that to be a deterrent of
Okay.
any decision-making by any stretch. That was never the thought process. President of the board right here, he's shaking his
Okay.
head. Yeah. So, yeah.
so you're saying that will probably be adjusted or lengthened so that, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Appreciate
question.
I talked to PID about a week ago, and I'm in Section E, and they told me it would be 2.5 years till they got to that neighborhood to test the water. But I just heard you say that in areas where more homes are standing, there's a possibility that you could go forward to those areas, and there's quite a few homes standing in Section E. So is that possible?
We're looking at efficiencies right now. That we had kind of a global game plan that we were looking at to really kind of get a good understanding of what the plan was. And that was more of a zone by zone type of clearing. But we're looking at efficiencies to maybe do a street by street clearing to where homes are no longer even standing, to not even go into those streets, to just kind of shut that street off at this time and come back later to test that. So there is some type of efficiencies that we're looking to gain. So there could be where we could, and this is all very, very broad because we don't know what we're going to run into when we get into there. But we're hoping that we will get you water faster than that.
Also, I understood that you provide the potable water only when you're working in those zones, not beforehand. Is that correct?
So we're retooling our thoughts to see if maybe we can actually beat the potable water even to your place to clear quicker, so that you would be getting potable water even before your zone would have been tested.
Additionally, there was an email that came out, and I believe it was from Butte County Health Department, saying that if the water had gone on and you had water in your home, and if you had PVC piping, because the molecules are larger in that, the benzenes could have attached to the inside of your house, so therefore you could put in a Pelican, you can put in reverse osmosis, but the damage is done. The pipes in your house are corrupt. In terms of getting insurance coverage for any kind of filtration system, that just shot that all to heck. And I have talked to one water treatment person that talked to the regional director who said that was a very irresponsible statement to make.
Yeah, we did not put that press release out, and that was, I think it was 100% on the county that put that press release out, so I'm sorry. I
mean, that makes it difficult for people to get in water systems put in through their insurance company because they're going to jump on that.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to read mine. Is that okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, my name is Danae Douglas. I'm a tenant of Lancaster Drive home for almost 15 years. My home did not burn down. My landlord has worked fervently to get the house back to a safe environment, replaced insulation, had house professionally cleaned, replaced damaged siding, rebuilt all fences, rebuilt outbuildings, and brought an 1,100-gallon portable water tank that has been connected to the house. I am disabled and have been provided housing assistance from Housing Authority Section 8 for all these years. Section 8 requires me to get a home inspection prior to moving back into my home. When I called to get the inspection performed, this is my landlord has done this. Oh no, I did this part. Okay, sorry. I was told by HUD that no inspections in the town of Paradise would be performed because the California Department of Housing and Community Development in San Francisco has stated that the town of Paradise and the Paradise Irrigation District had made statements to the effect that regardless of the water being purveyed, the houses themselves are considered contaminated by the water being introduced into the home during or after the fire. The landlord of my home has made multiple phone calls to involved entities, including the Section 8 administration in Butte County, the town manager of Paradise, Paradise Irrigation District, Butte County Environmental Health, and the California Department of Housing and Community Development in San Francisco. The landlords and my position is that the water was never reintroduced into the pipes of the home and is assumed to be free of contaminants. Further, the landlord has queried each entity that if the quality of the water were tested at each and every water outlet in the home, both hot and cold, and it tested to meet state of California standards, would the tenant then be able to have the HUD inspection performed for moving the tenant back in? Starting from the highest authority, HCD, Housing and Community Development, stated that although a reasonable request, so long as Butte County and Paradise are telling them that water in the homes is not safe, there are no exceptions and there will be no exceptions. What we are asking for this evening is an end to the catch-22 of the various governmental statements that are blocking my reentry into my home with the Section 8 government assistance that is needed. Please inform me as to what can be done to modify your public statements. And the landlord said they couldn't be here because of scheduling conflict. And I've made several copies of this if this would help you. So.
I don't know the answer to if the house was never reintroduced.
Is this up? Okay, great. Thank you for saying what a lot of people I think are feeling and asking. I would say if you could give us a copy of that letter, somebody will run it up the flagpole to find out what's going on and what types of questions need to be answered. Because without a lot of information, but we can get that talking one-on-one and with others, we can find a way to help. The question that was raised here is really critical in terms of how do you know if your home is safe? And that is a question that PID has taken extremely seriously, as well as many other agencies. And so I'm sure, I can't speak for other agencies, but I can try to push them to respond if they.
That would be great. Thank you. So can I leave these with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
My turn. To me, one of the saddest things about looking up at this podium is you're all drinking bottled water. You're not even drinking your own water. Last week when I was here, they were telling me that this meeting was going to be held, and I asked, well, have you guys banned any source of benzene from your new system? I didn't get an answer. I also asked, well, can the City of Paradise building regulations ban plastic pipes or plastic meters or any of the other stuff that caused benzene? Let's face it, if the pipes save you 15 cents a foot and it makes the cleanup take 3 years, it's kind of an obvious fool's savings. I'm living in Apple Tree Village, which is just north of here. And there's about 20 homes, all pretty much in a cluster. And I've seen water running out of a fire hydrant, so I took a sample last week. And I asked, can I drop this sample somewhere in Paradise to have it tested? The answer was no. But you can do that in Chico, and you can do that in Oroville, but you can't do that here. And I have to ask you as a customer, that's pretty lame customer service. If you really want us to believe you, then you should be offering places where we could have our water tested for free, such as your office, such as the town city hall. Okay, you were talking earlier about how all the stuff has to be taken elsewhere to be tested. Well, that's fine. But we should be able to drop a sample off and find out what the caliber of our water is. And I'm really looking forward to talking to the gentleman from Purdue after this meeting. But like I said, 2 or 3 years before we know that our water is going to be okay. And what about that place with 20 houses all in a row? And there's no way to find out if our water is safe. It's been a real uphill struggle for people that, you know, it's one thing if you own a house and you own property it sits on, but if you own a house and you don't own the property it sits on, you're actually in a legal limbo. And much like that lady with Section 8, you know, like there needs to be a much more clear way of people finding their way forward from here.
Yeah, so I'll answer the question too, is that we're not introducing benzene into the system, the pipes themselves. And we are looking at mitigating factors going forward with reconstruction to look at those, the new construction to mitigate damages that might happen again, like what just happened now. Again, this has happened one other place. We actually had an industry standard pipe replacement project. We were going forward. This was what the industry did. But the industry hasn't seen this before. When it comes to sampling for in-home, we are looking for help for individuals. We understand that that's a cost, that's a burden, that's something that you guys are having to deal with. And we're looking outside for private funding for individuals so that we can help those individuals test their homes.
The county's already doing it for free. How come you can't be the place where we drop off our samples? It's as simple as that.
Good, okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for all of your work. I mean, I think we all know this is an unprecedented and monumental problem. So I hope any of our comments don't, I mean, I'm sure we're all frustrated, but I don't think it's a reflection on the work you're doing. You're trying to find your way. Yes. There's no roadmap, right? But I do want to say that for me, it's not unreasonable to think 2 or 3 years is what it's going to take. Because how many miles of pipe, and you got to do it right. But if we're serious about rebuilding paradise, if it isn't just putting up billboards and signs, and we say we need this town to come back, water is the lifeblood. Nothing is going to happen until we get water to businesses and standing homes. And I commend some of the businesses like Starbucks and the Thai restaurant that have taken it on their own to put in water tanks. I've done that to my home. We're fortunate that our home is standing. But I'd like to know, I mean, I don't think it's reasonable to say wait 2 or 3 years. We need to have water sooner. There's a way to do it. Tanks and a pressure pump. It's not that expensive. It can be done. And I'd like to know, and again, everything else is on hold until we have water. So the town is not going to come back. We're not going to have businesses and people move back with contaminated water. So it's really on your shoulders. Sorry, guys. It's your responsibility. This is your thing. So I'd like to know some details about the tanks. Where will they be placed? Will a pump be included? Will there be plumbing? Will those of us who've already encumbered this expense, will we be reimbursed? How are you going to do this? And I don't know if it's in your plan. You talked about a draft plan. If it's still being formulated, but we're, 4 or 5 months along here, and a lot of people have figured out how to do it, and it seems like a water district ought to be able to do it too. So could you talk a little bit about the solution right now with tanks and potable water and delivery and all the details about the pumps and everything that's involved in getting people up and running?
Yeah, so tanks are not out of the question. We're trying to limit the amount of tanks that need to come into town by clearing quicker of those areas that we're going to require to have tanks. There will be tanks that people need. We know that. Our plan is to have a tank, a pressure pump on that tank, and a backflow device on that, so that there is pressure into there, and then to be able to provide temporary water delivery to those tanks itself too. So that is part of our plan. The vast amount of how many tanks we need and how much trucking we need in the town to fill up those tanks on a weekly or bi-weekly or however long it needs to take basis. It's still in the planning phases because we're looking at how quickly we can clear other areas that aren't going to be required to have tanks. So that's the thing. The procurement process is lengthy. It's just the way it is. We're working with FEMA and Cal OES to make sure that we're working within their purview of reimbursement. And so that process we have worked through. We have asked the questions. One of the questions we asked, and this was 2 days ago, what about the people that already put a tank in? And we're looking for that answer. So we'll get that answer back to you. I don't have that answer today, but we're asking the question for sure.
Do you have any sense of a timeline on that?
I'll have to look at my FEMA people. We're hoping that we have answers back by April 4th, I think is the number that we're looking at.
The PID main office has been providing bottled water for us to drink. As of this Friday and continuing this morning, it has no longer been available. Is it going to be available in the future? And if so, could you extend the hours?
We're looking at extending the hours. So we just moved back up to our office, which has helped us a lot with the logistics of open. The phone lines actually work now. We're open from 9 to 4, and we have talked about extending the hours, or at least giving availability to bottled water for longer than the 10 to 2. It might not be the drive-through, it might be come in and pick it up and take it to your car type thing, but we have looked at that. We have had some logistical issues with the prior week with water bottle delivery to PID, which we're rectifying, so we should be back into business next week, or hopefully this week, with delivering water and then extending those hours. It might not be the drive-through, but it might be availability within the office to come in and pick up a case of water or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5.
Thank you.
Yep. But yeah, just one more thing too is that we do have 2 filling stations at the plant for 1 gallon up to 5 gallon bottles that is free, no charge.
First, I'd like to thank you as well for your dedication and service to the community. It's been really, really important, and it's been appreciated. But also, like the gentleman before, please don't thank me for my patience. I'm not. My lot is cleared already, and now I'm dealing with the various plethora of agencies, PID being one. I've got to get water, and from my perspective, my lot's clean, I'm ready to go. 3 years is not reasonable. I can't accept that. Nobody in Paradise can sell property today because we don't have water. It's huge, and 3 years is not an acceptable time. The other thing was the elephant in the room was rather glossed over as financial problems. Really like to have some details, some numbers. Are they insurmountable if we don't get infusions from elsewhere? What's plan B?
Yeah, the funding.
I'll take my answer offline.
Okay. I'm gonna. First of all, we want to make sure that we're not stopping any building in Paradise. So if your lot's cleared and you're ready to go, we have a plan that will deliver construction water during the time of construction. And if there's no potable water there upon when you are ready to move in, then come talk to us and let us help you. We're here for you to help, so that there is no stopping of that. If you're drawing up plans, come in and talk to us. We can work with you to find solutions. We don't know all of the questions that you guys have about all of that until we hear it, and then we can take it to the higher ups and say, hey, this is what's happening and we need answers, or this is what's going to happen. Financial issues. Right now we are running at a very, very tight budget, very tight budget. We've lost over 8 employees, maybe 10 employees, and we haven't rehired them. We're running on skeleton crews right now because there's the uncertainty of our financial issues. We are asking the state for a bridging of 3 years of revenue that we've lost due to the fire. That equals $21 million. We feel like after that 3-year process, we can come up with a new business model for PID to sustain PID through this whole time and have it here available for the rebuild and for the town to grow again. So what we're asking, and there'll be letters out there in the foyer, is we're looking for support. Please fill out one of the letters out there, sign it, and we're going to send that to the legislator for support for them to come back and to help PID last for 3 years. That's what we're asking for. We're confident that after that 3-year period, we can make it. The issue that we're having, that we're running up against, is there's been precedent set for property tax bridging. The county got it, and the town, I know, is part of that. They've done that before. They know how to do that. They've never seen a destruction of a special district like they have on this one. So this is a new frontier for them, so we need to really push them to make the right decision for PID.
Well, this is kind of a follow-up of the last gentleman. A little closer, is that better? As a follow-up of what the gentleman said a few minutes ago about he wants to rebuild, he's spending money to rebuild. I spent $200,000 today to rebuild 2 of my rentals. If I'm going to wait 2 years to be able to put water to those rentals, I'm losing money. And I can't afford that. I've lost 3 rentals in this town, and I cannot afford to lose that kind of money. What are you going to do for a schedule? I want to see a schedule, not we're thinking about and we're planning this and we're planning that. What is your schedule? You've had 5 months to do a schedule. You should have a schedule. If I was your boss, you'd be walking down the road. You've got to get a schedule. How do people plan their lives? You talk about losing your money. I'm losing money because I've got 3 rentals that I don't have anymore.
I understand. I understand your frustration. It's okay. It's okay. I understand your frustration. And we're fighting for those new constructions. We're fighting for temporary water to those new constructions that maybe doesn't have potable water at this time, but is going to eventually, that we can get you that water in the meantime so that you can have people move into those rentals and that you can finish your construction of those rentals. So we're fighting for that. We're going to have answers for that. We don't have those answers today, but we are working hard for you as an individual. If we don't get the answer from FEMA and Cal OES, we're not stopping there. We're going and we're working with not-for-profits right now to try to get temporary water for individuals like yourself that you can come up and rebuild and you can have potable water to that.
Temporary
Timeline-wise.
What kind of temporary water are we talking about?
Tanks.
And who's going to wire up the power and everything for that?
We will.
You're going
and
to
we'll service them. Our plan is to have a place in PID that would fill up the tank, come and deliver water to.
I thought I understood you to say a few minutes ago that you don't know how many tanks you can provide.
Right. So we're trying to actually get people cleared before tanks would actually go on their property. So we're trying. So we're trying to actually go faster so that we don't have to put tanks on there.
Okay. If you could elevate your voice, you can't hear in the back.
Sorry
I can.
about that. Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. I think like everyone in this room, we're all interested in rebuilding the town as quickly as possible. We all know that. And there's probably a lot of us in here, like myself, that are realizing we're drastically underinsured, and the insurance company's not picking up all the costs. And my concern I want to address with you is I read a couple weeks ago that any of the structures destroyed by fire that are going to be rebuilt will need to replace their service lines from the meter to the house. There's probably a lot of us in here that are doing financial feasibility studies on rebuilding, and putting the numbers down and adding them all up and comparing them to what we got from the insurance company and what we're willing to spend on top of that. With regard to replacing the line from the street, I had a licensed plumber from a reputable large firm in Chico come up and look at my line and give me an estimate on what it would cost to replace that service line from the meter to the house. The estimate, and you all might want to have this done, was $6,500. So you might want to look into that. And 180 feet was the distance. And to boot, the water line runs immediately under the 5 trees that are alive on my property. And he said those will probably be gone because they're just going to come in with a ditch witch and cut the roots and chainsaw them. And personally, I shut the water off at the meter before I evacuated because I was worried about water gushing out everywhere and having an $800 water bill. So anyway, and we have a galvanized pipe, and the plumber said there's virtually no chance that benzene got absorbed into the metal pipe. And he said it's just a waste of money. My request to PID would be to maybe let us at least test the water that's going to be coming into our house before we spend massive amounts of money to replace a line that's perfectly good. We ought to have that option, just a request. That's all I have.
I would just comment on that between the meter and the house is not PID jurisdiction, so it's not something that we would require. And I can't speak to insurance, but I know that codes and upgrades do cover some, insurance covers some on codes and upgrades. It's very likely, or there's a likelihood for sure, because all new construction, residential construction, will require a fire sprinkler system.
Yes.
So it's likely that that line going from the meter, or there's a good likelihood anyway, that the line going from the meter to the home will need to be upgraded to accommodate the fire system.
For a larger size?
Correct.
Pipe? Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, I'll check with the sprinkler. I already got a bid on that too. That's not cheap either. But I guess I misinterpreted in the, I think I read it in one of the newspapers or on Action News or somewhere, that it was PID's direction that you wouldn't hook up our meter unless we had a new service line. Is that a misunderstanding? That's not coming from PID?
Well, I think that's going to be addressed through the service line, whatever. So if the service line is contaminated, we have to replace it.
More of a code issue than a PID requirement?
Well, I think from the meter to the house has nothing to do with PID. That will be a building.
Okay, so I misunderstood what I've read then.
But between the meter and the main, of course, that's PID.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought it was a PID directive. And no.
Not between the meter and the house.
Okay.
I didn't catch that.
No, I didn't see anything. I've talked with building permit people, and they didn't say anything about it. And but.
So the process for the fire sprinkler system design happens in that process in the building, in the plan stage. So it is part and parcel to the building permit.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hello. So I'm putting like the high quality carbon filter for my whole home. Can you hear me now? Okay, so I'm putting the activated carbon filter for the whole home. Do you think I'll be okay for like showers and washing and preparing food?
Hello? No, great. Thank you for that question. A lot of people are asking that question. There's a number of different vendors out there. And there are a number of different plumbers that are installing other devices. In short, these activated carbon systems have been used around the country for small population areas where maybe There's a dry cleaner that dropped something into the ground and it contaminated the water, but not on a large scale like this before. And so one of the questions that you want to ask is, what are those systems designed for? So many of the systems that are certified by NSF 6053, which is an industry testing standard, are generally exposed to about 15 parts per billion of benzene constantly, and they have a certain removal. In and around the area here, they're sometimes non-detect, 0 basically, and the other times it's not. And so one of the questions that you want to ask yourself is, so how frequently are they going to test your system to determine that it's working? And in other parts of the country, they've done monthly testing. In other parts of the country, they've done more frequent testing. Yearly testing would not be appropriate for this area, I would say, based on the fact that there's so little unknown. There's so many unknowns. With the data that comes out from PID in the future, you're going to probably get a better idea about what the levels are that are coming into that system. But again, I would make sure that the testing's frequent enough so that whoever sold that to you or you're thinking about buying it from stands behind it, and you have data to prove that, and that we don't go on faith.
Okay. Also, I tested the water from my kitchen sink, and it came back negative. So do you think I'm okay for the rest of the house? I mean, because it all comes in one pipe, right?
The water comes in through your service line and then generally branches off into the hot water system and cold water system. And if you have a trunk and branch design house, like copper piping or something like that, parts of it will go to the kitchen sink and other parts may go to the shower and kitchen sink. So the question is, if you tested for benzene only in the kitchen sink, is that enough? I would say there's not enough data to determine if that's enough. And this is something that we've been pushing people to make decisions on at the state and county and federal level about. Because we know that you need this information a long time ago. And you need it tomorrow, you need it yesterday. And so what I would say is possibly one of the reasons why you haven't seen any movement on that is there hasn't been any meetings where people have come up and asked, or meetings where people have called for help. And I think if you want something to happen, you need to ask in other ways. And I know you all have things to do, and you're all rebuilding, and you're living in 3 different places, and you have families. But I think if you want to support PID, if you want to support the people that are involved in this and get answers to those questions, you do need to have some organization and mobilize and fill out those forms, tell people that water matters, and you need the questions answered that you're asking. And I'm happy to talk with any one of you about water testing or whatever after. So.
Thank you.
Hi there. I presently am living in Valley Springs, which is outside of Stockton. I would love to come home someday. My house is still standing, and I'm very blessed with that. But the idea with this water, especially the idea that tanks would be installed. I went to PID and talked to them and basically gave them where I live, which is at the lower portion of Paradise. I was told you'll be the last one to get anything. So I've submitted to my insurance for a tank and all the equipment, and I hopefully will be bought, or it will be able to be bought and installed at about $6,500. My question is if I install that tank and get it in place, will PID supply water to me so I'm not spending $200 to $600 a month for delivery services for water? That's one of my questions.
And I wish I had the answer of yes right now, but we're fighting for that answer right now. We've asked FEMA and Cal OES for that, that we've asked them that same exact question, and we're waiting for an answer back, and we hope the answer is yes.
Okay.
If not, we're going to work with outside agencies to try to find funding to help PID customers so that they're not having to basically shoulder the burden of that whole delivery of the water.
Next question. Whoops. I don't know if it's working. There we go. Next question is, if we're having such a dilemma with testing samples of water, and I agree wholeheartedly that you'll need multiple testing locations throughout the house, why not bring a testing facility up here, purchase and install, or get into a point where it's a lot closer? I called and I was quoted $90 per test and had to 10 to 15 business days just to get an answer for one test. And I'm looking at probably $1,500, $1,800 in testing with all the things that I have.
Yeah, we understand. We are probably going to, under our plan, we're probably going to have to do over 20,000 tests.
Right.
So we actually asked the question, let us just buy the equipment, let's have it up here, let's be able to do our own tests, train our own personnel. The problem is there's regulations when it comes to testing. Those regulations are that this lab has to be certified by the Division of Drinking Water for those tests to be certified. To get a certification of a division, a DDW lab, we found out the timeline is over a year. So we have decided to move towards finding those labs that are already certified and taking over basically as much capacity as we can with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I used to be a water treatment plant operator also for a small outfit, so I appreciate you guys, and I know where you're at. Thank you very much. I do have a problem, though. I've got 8 units left out of 48. Bushman Road, Lower End, USDA Rule of Development, low housing, seniors. I've got plenty that want to come back. Now, you talk about putting tanks in. Would you put tanks in to supply these units?
Well, we have to, why don't you come in and talk to us?
I will do that.
And see where you're at. There's a lot of unknowns that they're on that question.
Yeah, we put a fast track on rebuilding the others, and I've got a meeting with Bob Nelson of the HUD disaster response team Friday, so I'll be in to talk to you before then.
Why don't you come in and talk to me?
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks again for everything.
Hello. Oh, listen, it worked for me. I get really nervous talking in public, so bear with me. We got our property cleared. We're building. We're stubborn as hell, and we're getting water tanks ourselves, and we're going to fill them ourselves. And mind you, we are underinsured, like 90% of the people in this darn town. Other than the ones that were silver insured, they're like crazy elsewhere. Lucky them. But my question is I heard, because of all the hoops that we have had to jump through just trying to get to be able to build our home, we now have to have, obviously, water sprinklers for our homes, because all of them have to have water sprinklers. So basically what you're saying is you're telling people that some aren't going to be able to do it for 3 years unless they get water tanks, period, anyway, right? I mean, pretty much bottom line. We're in A, by the way. I mean, we're going to be one of the first ones.
Yeah.
We're lucky.
Yeah, timeline-wise, we don't know. So obviously, worst case scenario is that there could be areas of town that are ready for rebuild that are not going to have potable water available. And we want to work with those people to make sure that there's an availability of temporary water so that we're not stopping that process.
Okay.
It might not be the most ideal, but we also want to work with those people to make sure that there's availability for them to rebuild and to move back home.
And we're working with time constraints too, obviously, because I have a disabled son. I want to get back home as soon as possible. So are you guys doing the water pressure testing for the sprinkler systems for the house? Yeah. Okay, so when we have a water tank and we have the pump on there, you guys can utilize that for our water system, our water pressure testing.
We've actually modified the program for fire sprinkler design data that we're giving static pressure ranges to the fire sprinkler designers, and they are currently using that, so they're able to design the system that would go into the house. And I think that the town is probably considering what it would look like if a fire sprinkler system, and I can't speak for the town, but I would imagine they are looking into what it would look like to run a fire sprinkler system from a storage tank.
Okay, so it's not in place yet, basically, is what you're saying? I mean,
I would not say that it's in place yet. Progress is being made on that front.
okay, just testing. Thank you.
I have a question regarding the water tanks. If my mom is in Zone A, so if she had to have water tank, does that work for inside and outside, or is that just for inside? She has a couple of dogs and a couple of cats, and they can't really be outside, and a garden box is. That's my question.
Yeah, it's truly going to be an allotment. So you're going to have a certain amount of water that you'll have to use for a certain amount of time, right? So it's a pretty much, we're saying that it's indoor use, but it's an allotment, right? So you kind of have to judge on how much water you need.
Right. How does it work? How does it work to do it outside, though? I don't understand what a water tank.
How the tank is outside?
Yeah, the only one I'm familiar with is a gravity fed in Honey Run.
Yeah, so the tank would sit outside, there would be a pump, and then that line would then direct connect into the house. And so that pump would pressurize everything in that house with that water from the tank. So you're able to pressurize through a pump instead of having to gravity feed it right into it from a storage tank.
Okay, so it wouldn't work outside. Because it wouldn't work outside then. If it's connected to the inside.
If we're talking about a system working outside, so the tank, the pump, and the pressure tank are, if you're familiar with well systems, that's exactly what it is. You have a storage tank, you have a pump, and you have a pressure tank. And the pressure tank provides the pressure to feed the house. So depending on the configuration of your plumbing, certainly a hose bib, if it ran through the inside plumbing of your house, would have water to it.
Okay.
So the configuration of your plumbing would determine that.
What.
But I think what Kevin is referring to, and if you don't mind me speaking to it, is that the plan, we looked at a 2,500 gallon water tank, and the delivery that we're proposing would be a one time per week delivery. So it'd be a top-off system, if you will. If it's 1,000 gallons, if it's 1,500 gallons, if it's 150 gallons. So that's the general idea of that. So when Kevin referred to the allotment and how that water is used, then that would certainly fall under the purview of the user of how that water is utilized.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Since the water system is a gravity flow system, do homes in Lower Paradise that have no benzene in the water at this point, if that changes, can that change, first of all? And if it does change, would you consider testing at the standing homes to, go ahead. Go ahead. Would you consider testing at the standing homes, and will the water change?
So we do, and we want to sample at standing homes, and we need to sample at standing homes. Every service line, regardless if it's a standing home or not, we need to sample every service line. The idea with a standing structure, especially if someone is living there and using that water, is we need to find a way to cease use of that water, let that water stagnate in the service line for a period of time, and then draw the sample from that.
And that's the 72 hours?
That is, yes.
Secondly, so yes, the water can change.
Yeah, there's dynamics within the water that there could be, but we're trying to, that's why we're isolating it.
Secondly, I was sitting here listening to the problems that you all have, and I appreciate your position and your efforts. Would you consider wells a viable option? And as far as your funding is concerned, have you thought of a stock sale? Shares of stock?
We don't have any stock to sell, which is one of the issues. We wish we did. But from a well standpoint, the ridge is not the best place to drill wells, especially a community of wells, right? A ton of wells.
Well, you only have...
It's hit and miss out there. We can't tell you not to go drill a well, but we feel like we're going to get out in front of this enough that that shouldn't be a necessity for you.
Is PID not a corporation?
No, we're a government agency, so we're
Can the town of Paradise? Well, okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My question is quite similar. We're living in our home. The water's connected. We're planning on putting a charcoal filtration system in just as soon as possible. I'm curious, first of all, and I think you kind of answered it. At first, the benzene was moving around because of disruptions due to the campfire, right? Is it still moving around? So if I test my water and it comes out negative, is it going to... I don't know if it's going to stay negative next week. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a tough question. That's why part of our plan is when we do find it to isolate it so that we guarantee that would not backflush back into the system and recontaminate cleared areas. So
that's your goal when this is all done. Right now, for me to personally test, I don't know how long that test result will stay accurate. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
The second piece is we're going to put that filtration system in. You guys are doing everything you can, and you're going to get to our house eventually and test it. So you'll be testing through the filtration system, no?
In front of the filtration system.
In front of the filtration system.
So we'll be testing at the meter. So
you'll be testing at the meter.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kevin, I have a couple of questions here. Number one is the way you're working the plans from the top down. You had the zone map there, A, B, C, D, E. The people at the lower end of town are going to be the last ones to be considered. You know, we have they still pay their taxes. We're all part of the same town, so that makes it causes a hardship on the people that are in the lower part of the town, not be able to move back for 2 or 3 years. The other question I have is the idea of are you going to be able to supply enough pressure to run these sprinkler systems, which are, to me, the sprinkler systems are an outrageous thing to be put in a house. I'm working with looking at this. There's a simpler system to be put in on houses. It was the sprinklers on the tops of the roof and actually saved the houses. Sprinklers inside the buildings are for egress only. And are you going to be able to supply enough water pressure to even do that? You'll have to completely resize all your lines in the town. Well, you know, that's the one consideration. The other thing is, I know you hired water engineers and waterworks. Could you please tell all the people who waterworks are, what their experience is on doing this kind of thing? I think most of the people would like to know who they are, please.
I'll bring them up right now.
Okay, thank you.
Waterworks engineer Sammy Cater from Waterworks Engineers.
Yeah. There we go.
Lower the expectation there a little bit.
There we go. Thank
So
you.
yeah, my name is Sammy Cater. I'm with Waterworks Engineers. We have been brought on board to assist the district in recovery. And we are a water and wastewater engineering firm. We've been around for about 15 years. I'm out of Reading. My house was 1,000 feet away from the car fire. And I completely empathize with everything that people are going through and understand the questions that everybody has. And we have been delving into every single one of those questions in great detail as we develop the recovery plan, along with all the great people from PID and Cal OES and FEMA and DDW and all the different agencies involved, because it is a very complex problem, and all of the issues that everyone has brought up are very important, and it's our job to help try to balance all of those into a plan that can be implemented.
I think that takes care of that part. The other question is water hydrants. Are the hydrants in the town, are they separate from the individual water lines? Or are they supplying drinking water as well as everything? I mean, I don't know if there's a separate system for hydrants or a separate system for water lines. Are they all one system?
They are all one system. It consists of a transmission where we transmit large quantities of water, large volumes of water through distribution lines to service lines, and the hydrants, generally speaking, are off the distribution water mains.
Well, listen, at the present time, they're having a problem with Cal Fire because we can't. If you have hydrants shut off, they can't fight fires. They have to have the water to fight fires. And what Cal Fire's problem is, there's two big problems. One is the amount of dead trees all over there that they're chopping down is causing a big fire hazard. The second thing is they have to have water trucks now, water tenders, providing them with water. Could one of the priorities be to get the hydrants up first before all over town? They can, no matter where they are, top to bottom, so that if we have another fire, we can be able to fight it. That's to me, it seems a reasonable request. The other thing is, the last one I have is, are we working with the other FEMA agencies? It seems like everybody's working independently, and we have to all work together to get this thing done. If the PG&E has maps of all their lines, all their easements, everything, all through the town. They have a fantastic organization system, but they're putting in gas lines. At the same time, if they're going to put in a gas line, they have to dig the street up. If we have to change the water lines, we'll have to dig the street up. If we work together, we might only have to dig the street up one time.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
we're trying to coordinate any type of digging or any type of, I mean, we're talking about the town also on coordination, gas line, PG&E. We just don't know where we're going to dig yet. That's the issue, right? We don't know what's contaminated. And for the other question was hydrants. Done. We got those up. Those are up and running. That's why we had to get the system up and pressurized, not only to get water to people with standing homes, but to get the hydrants up and pressurized so that there is the ability for CAL FIRE to fight fires in town.
I would just like to add to that, Tom, our distribution system is pressurized. Okay, to be clear, it's pressurized. We've flushed it, and we have the hydrants that are in good repair have water to them.
But the other part, I'm in a part of town. I'm in the part of town over there. We were the last ones to get in. January 28th, Oliver and Valley View, and it's a devastation area right now. And the hydrants are broken, and some of them are missing. And I'm looking, nobody seems to be concerned with that. FEMA, we don't know what their plan is, where they're starting in the front of the town, the back of the town, where?
We are concerned. We are concerned with hydrants that are in disrepair and that are damaged. We are working with the town of Paradise because town of Paradise owns the hydrants. We maintain them. PID maintains them. And so we are working. Remember, there are a lot of broken, damaged items that are connected to the water system, but we do take that seriously. We are concerned with it, and we are working at getting those replaced and working.
I just want to thank you guys for everything you've been doing. So my husband and I had 3 rental properties here in town. We've owned them since '03, long time. The first house on the property burnt to the ground, but we have 2 that survived. Jim knows me, we talked. Anyway, so my first question is, so we're online. We actually put a big filtration system in. We're trying to get things ready for new tenants. We're waiting for the soil test to come back so we get our certification so we can actually put people back on the property. So are you taking us back offline and putting these water tanks in, or are we going to keep getting water fed to the property, or what? I don't understand.
Yeah, so our plan right now is to have as little interruption on water service as possible. If there's a need to bring a tank in for a temporary water, then that's what we're going to do. But there's other options out there that we're looking at so that there's not that need to be able to bring water maybe from a different street over or from a different area so that it wouldn't have to be a tank. So we're looking into multiple options right now. The end option is that we would have to put you on temporary water, or if there's 72 hours, if that's all we needed, then there could be this time where you vacate the home too at that point too. But we're trying to make it as inconvenient as possible.
Okay, thank you.
More like as convenient as possible. So we're in G, so we're going to be the last one, so I'm thinking 7-8 years. But we went ahead and put a water tank in because our house is standing, us and our neighbors. And as soon as our house is done being retrofitted after the fire, we lose loss of use, because water is not a reason to not live in a home. So we put a tank in. So all these people that are waiting down in G and everywhere else that have homes that are standing, that are waiting 2 years, 3 years to get a tank or to get water service, they're gonna run out of loss of use if they even have it. So why aren't we, maybe I misunderstood you, that you said you're trying to limit the number of tanks. Why aren't you guys actively rushing to get all standing homes tanks now so they can get back into their property and start utilizing it, get everything tested before they run out of loss of use and insurance and are screwed?
So we considered that too when we were drawing up the plan and the idea, and that's why we asked for so many, because we had to identify how many standing structures there were, and then now we have to identify are people living in those standing structures. And so the priority is to look at those standing structures, but because we do have to start in the top and work our way down, because we have to follow the flow of water to clean it, because we don't want water reverse flowing and taking potential contamination and putting it back in a clean area. Mm-hmm. So the idea is, and the first development of the plan was to get those standing structures as quick as we can. And it's months, if that's what we're doing, it's months. That part is not years. So we really need to make sure that when we talk about between 2 and 3 years, we're talking about total recovery of the system, not the deployment of tanks. Okay. That make sense?
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. Has anyone looked into, and I haven't looked into this because my home is standing, so I don't need to retrofit it, but doing a dry chemical suppression system versus the sprinkler system, so we're not impacting all the water lines, and if water gets shut off in a fire, we're out of luck again?
So I think that
that's
a good question for engineers and fire sprinkler system designers. There are options out there, of course. You don't have to just have a water wet system, right? There are dry systems, there are chemical systems, there are many different configurations and types of fire suppression systems or fire sprinkler systems. So that's absolutely something that would be a good question to ask fire sprinkler designers. And I'm going to follow up on that because I know a few.
Well, and I think it's important to note that the sprinkler systems inside the house, they just help put out a fire and help people get out if there's a fire inside the home. It certainly doesn't stop a wildfire. And the other point that you made, which is a very good point, we don't know, at least the town doesn't know, how many people are not living in their home because they don't have water, or because of whatever reason it's not cleaned yet, or they're not coming back, or they don't want to move in, or whatever. I think it would be good to know for PID from the people who have standing homes who want to get back home, except for a water tank. Maybe they let PID know so we can get those tanks to the people that need them.
Is there a way for you guys to do a link either on your site or on your Facebook and start doing that survey to gather that information? Because I know a lot of people probably couldn't make it tonight to do the papers you filled out tonight.
Yeah, so we're going to do two things. We're going to have on the website a registration form, and then we're actually deploying, how many? 24? 34 individuals to actually go around town. So if you see these individuals going around town, knocking on your door, that's what they're doing. They're taking a survey of who standing homes and then who's living in those standing homes. So, and we're trying to collect that data for that specific purpose. And the dates they're going to be deployed, April 2nd through the 4th.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
But if you're not there, then go on our website and register for on PID. And you can also come into the office 9 to 4.
All right. Hi, guys. Kristen Cooper. I'm with North State Water Treatment. And I really appreciate your time tonight, because for many of our clients, there's been a lot of confusion, as I'm sure you guys have gotten. I have a question regarding the protocols that Dr. Welton has put forward that we now follow at our company, which is the 72-hour fallowing of the water so that you can get a most accurate testing in multiple locations, if you put in a treatment system, sizing it up, et cetera, et cetera. When I spoke, as one of our clients mentioned, I spoke to the Regional Water Quality Office, and they told me that they were not real concerned about benzene in the home because, to their knowledge, there had not been one positive test for benzene in anyone's home. And we actually have been kind of discouraging people from spending the money because these are not inexpensive tests. So we have been discouraging people from actually taking the tests if they're going to be investing in a whole house filtration system and an RO. So my question is, and when I asked the regional office if they had been taking their own tests, he told me yes, and that they'd only taken 20. One, do you know if they are using the same protocols that you have eloquently put forth? And can we somehow formally memorialize those? Because they're not out there really anywhere. We've tried to capture them, but from your meeting minutes and stuff like that. So memorializing that protocol, I think, would be incredibly helpful. And then second, if we're all using the same protocols, and then we can take the tests that we're getting and the results and actually compare apples to apples. Because let's face it, people taking a water sample in their mason jar into the lab is not going to result in an accurate test. And people talk about going and taking their own tests. And as a company that employs a very capable water operator, we know that there's a lot to this. Protocols for test taking, protocols at the lab. So I think that it's really important for all of us to have the most accurate information possible. So what I would like to know, because we have our own clients that test themselves, so I'd like to know if anybody has ever gotten a positive benzene or VOC test, period. And if they could let you know, Kevin, or me at North State Water Treatment, because I would like to turn that material over to Reese Crenshaw. I will be happy to do that. He asked me to do that. But that's really important. And then there was something else I saw that tonight, I thought you said that you've gotten positive hits for benzene, but no other VOCs. But then I thought you said on your website or in your meeting minutes that you have had positive hits for other VOCs. So two things on that. Love to get the raw data. I know that's not appealing to a lot of people. It's really appealing to me. Mm-hmm. So if we could possibly get that from you. And then have you gotten positive hits on other VOCs?
So I'm going to answer that question, and then I'm going to
Okay.
let Andy answer the other question. Yes, we have. What I said was that we haven't had, well, we've had hits for other VOCs, but the indicator that we've seen a lot is benzene. So if we have benzene,
Okay.
it means we have other VOCs. If we don't have benzene, there hasn't been, I think there's been 2 hits of other VOCs in those test results.
Okay.
So we have gotten other VOCs, but benzene has been the indicator.
Yeah.
And benzene is the one that's regulated by DDW at that lowest level of 1 part per billion for the benzene in the house.
Many people have been taking their own tests in water samples. And in Santa Rosa, after the Tubbs fire, they determined that a 72-hour stagnation period was good for them. And they didn't do a scientific study. They didn't test 24, 6 hours, 1 hour, or 2 weeks. They just ran with 72. And that soak time worked for them. And that made them comfortable, and they were able to find contaminated equipment and rip it out of the ground and put new safe materials in. Here in PID, but also across Butte County, some people have been using the 72-hour soak. And so the reason why was because they called back to Santa Rosa and said, how did you do this? And they said, just use this 72-hour soak, and that worked for us. There's no study behind it, but it worked. And so the 72-hour soak is not a scientifically fully defensible test. What it is, however, is that there's this work that the US EPA in Purdue and Manhattan College, a colleague of mine is here tonight, we did, which basically showed that it takes about 2 weeks for stuff to be sitting in your pipes to reach what's called equilibrium. And what that means is there's an equal amount in the pipe than there is outside the pipe. And so if you only take a 1 hour sample, not much time has passed where you can get stuff leaching into your pipes, from your pipes into your water. If you wait 24 hours, if more stuff is there, theoretically, it would leach out to a higher concentration. So if you wait 72 hours, that's better, generally, if it's there. And so that's where the 72-hour approaches come from, and we have reiterated that over and over. We've talked to all the water companies involved. We've talked to you. We've talked to other water treatment providers. And when homeowners have contacted us and they ask what to do, we tell them, do 72, because that's what PID is doing. That's what Santa Rosa did, and it worked out for them. I have been contacted by people who had contamination in their homes, and I have been told by the state that they don't have knowledge of that. And so I think that is an issue where a lot of people are trying to figure out what's going on in their own homes, and the state doesn't have that information. And so I think if you have this type of information, there should be some way to get it to people that are making decisions, because people may be making decisions without the best information available. And that is what we have collectively tried to prevent. And that's why we reached out to you and others as well. So I would say I wholeheartedly share your concern. If you all have information and you don't want to post it on Facebook, that's fine. You know, call me, send me an email, talk to other people, and we're happy to help you out.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cliff Jacobson. I'm also a resident here. I'd like to make a couple comments, and I do have a question. A gentleman earlier this evening made a comment about why couldn't he take a sample and bring it to you and have it tested. And there's a thing called a chain of custody, and there's a method for taking a sample. And VOC means volatile organic compound. It doesn't want to stay in the water. So if you took a sample inappropriately, and by the time you got it there, it may test for nothing because the VOC has already gone off into the atmosphere. So in order for them to have an accurate result, they have to take it in the same manner appropriately with the same method so that they can preserve that VOC in the water so they can actually test for its presence. So. You have it taken, well, if you want to take the sample yourself, first you would go to a lab like FGL in Chico, and you would ask them for the right type of container, and they can give you a methodology for pulling the sample appropriately and at the right place and with the right method. And with that chain of custody, you can bring it back to them and they can document that it was done correctly so that the results you get are accurate. Yeah. The other thing is I keep hearing water tanks, and I have to ask one question. Are those water tanks going to contain potable water?
The water that will be delivered will be from a potable source that will be delivered to those tanks. We will do our best to keep that water fresh and turned over in a systematic manner. Do you want to answer?
Okay. Well, and Kevin, I don't want to put you on the spot, but earlier I heard quite a few people saying that they needed to prove documentation of potable water access to their residents in order to meet other compliance requirements. So are they, I don't know that you're going to be able to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the water that they have in that tank that's going into their house is potable, that it has a positive chlorine level, and that it is actually potable drinking water, that they can take a shower with, cook with, and drink.
So those are details that we need to address. So the plan was tanks and water. Now there's all these fine details about water quality, because water quality is the same inside a tank as it is inside our water distribution lines. So it's certainly things that I know waterworks engineers are working on, and those details we absolutely need to address. And I would dare to say that before a tank was deployed, that we would have all of those questions answered and all those methods dealt with and in place.
Thank you. Are there any other contaminants above the MCL other than the VOCs that would make this water not potable? In other words, if the VOCs were not there, would the water then be potable?
Do you want to answer that question, Bill? This is Bill Taylor, our treatment plant superintendent, and we're going to get him a microphone before he starts yelling.
Of the sampling we've done, we haven't seen anything other than the VOCs. So if the VOCs were not present, the water would be potable.
Thank you. When you say that you're going to put in water tanks, am I incorrect or am I correct in saying that for the most of your distribution system, you do have water available that has been chlorinated, that the only reason it is not potable is that the VOCs are still present, and that it will be available until the short periods of time when you have to turn them off for testing, in which case you'd have the water tanks. Is that correct?
That is correct. That's our process right now that we're working through.
Okay, thank you. And just one last comment. I know that as an agency, as a special water district, and you have guidelines that you have to adhere to, but I would encourage people to seek out reputable water treatment companies, because there are air stripping methods and granulated activated carbon methods that will make the water potable. They will pull out the VOCs as long as that's the only thing that's in there. And as long as you do understand and have adequate sampling ports and establish a method for testing frequently enough, that could be an answer to those individuals that have spent thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars and don't have a way to, in some cases I heard, rent properties that they've already rejuvenated, and this could be a viable answer for them. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted some encouragement. I had some of my questions answered already, and the lady she's already online with water. There's water coming to her house. I'd like to know how many other homes and businesses are in that situation. And second question is, I'm real curious on how the CMA church is functioning with their water.
This building is operating off a well.
Okay, that's great.
We don't have an exact count of people that are in water in PID. That's one of the things that we're going to do with the survey, is to figure out not only standing homes, but how many standing homes have water turned on to those standing homes. We went through kind of a triage and when we were turning the system back on, we turned meters on, but turned valves on the other side of the meter on to allow the customer to make the decision if they wanted to have their water turned on or not. So we don't know how many people are turning their water on right now. We're not charging for any consumption charge or any type of charge that deals with that. So right now, the water is just kind of flowing into whoever's home would like it at this point. We don't have an exact count on that.
Okay, and what about the schools? How are you going to address water at the schools?
Yeah, so we've talked with the schools, and I think that they're looking at alternative water sources for each one of their school properties that they're looking to basically bring back in the spring.
So wells might be having a well might be a good option?
I think they are looking into that option.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yep.
Good evening. Thank you, everybody. So benzene, it's a carcinogenic. How does it harm us?
Good question, Jerry.
It is a very good question. I am not able to talk about that because I am not a medical professional. And who you would get that information from would be the health department.
What about this guy? Yeah.
Can either of you guys?
Right.
No?
He's a water treatment plant operator. But
Okay.
one of the reasons why it's regulated is because it can be a carcinogen at levels that are unacceptable. So California has set a level of one part per billion, whereas the US EPA, in my state, in Indiana, it's okay to have 5 part per billion because we don't have more stringent standards. So in California, there's a more stringent standard, and the health department, the medical professionals would be the ones that would be able to talk to you about.
And is it sticky? Does it stick to the pipes, or is it floating around and we're breathing it in?
So benzene is a volatile organic chemical. So it's like, it can be in gasoline, right? So when you pour gasoline on the ground, it's in a liquid form. But if you leave it there long enough, right, then there's a little stain, but there's no liquid there anymore. And so benzene is kind of like that liquid where it will volatilize into the air if you leave it there. Now, does it stay around? It can, what they call, stick to surfaces, and you can wipe it away pretty easily. But for plastic surfaces, it actually goes in.
It's porous and grabs it.
Like red dye on a yellow sponge, right? So if you put a little red dye on a yellow sponge, if you wipe it off real quick, you still have a yellow sponge. But if you leave it there too long, then it will go into that sponge. And that's kind of the process where you have plastics and benzene here.
Okay, you said 35% is infected or contaminated. Where? Can you let us know? Is it upper, lower, middle,
That's
everywhere?
Yeah, so we've been actually drawing samples from various areas around town.
Don't you mark where you get those samples?
We actually have that on our website.
You
There's
do?
a map
Okay,
that shows
thank
that,
you.
and it can tell you
where they are.
Yes, and
Thank
actually,
you.
when you click on, there's a round icon on their dot
Okay.
that's on there, and you can click on that, and actually will give you that information, the basic information of
Right
what's
on.
there.
Is there anything we can add to the benzene to neutralize it?
Hello? Yep, there we go. So benzene is generally not that reactive with anything. What people in other disasters have proposed to do is to put soap or surfactant in there to get it out. But that's a really bad idea for plumbing because the surfactant ruins your entire plumbing system and you have to replace it. So there's really no way to get it out of where it is without using other ways to do it. Can you react it? Can you destroy it? You can destroy it, but you have to use very high temperatures and heat, and those are more industrial operations. Catalytic oxidation, really, really high stuff. Mm-hmm.
I'm so sorry, I got just a couple more. Where am I? So sorry. Oh, so I have a well, and it's clean. I had it tested. So fixing these pipes that are dirty, is it inside the pipes or tearing up all this stuff? Is it going to get into our ground? Is it there forever? We've had all this rain. They're infected. Is it just on the inside, or is it going into our ground? Is it going to be in my well?
So if you have a well, the Butte County Health Department recommended you do a heavy metals test, you do a VOC test, and you do what's called an SVOC test. But for other people, because I've been contacted by a lot of people, and they say I ran benzene on the well like the health department told me, that they said do a whole bunch of tests. So if your well comes back negative, that's very good. And then I've had people contact me and they've said, well, their line from their well to their house actually was in the burn area. And so they had their insurance company replace that. So they didn't test it, they just replaced it. And then inside their home, they were interested in what was there, but because their homes were depressurized and there was no water in the house, they were pretty confident that nothing ever got in. So you're asking, is the soil contaminated? Generally,
will it be after you clean up all this mess?
The debris?
When you're digging up the benzene-infected pipes, does it leak and get all over the place?
Right, so that's a very good question. So if you have, think of a sponge, right? On one side of it, we have the red dye, and we put that on, and it goes down a little bit. Well, if we say that we're going to dig that sponge up, the red dye only went a little bit of the way through. And so when we dig that up, it didn't go anywhere else except that sponge. Same concept for the pipe. It actually goes a lot slower through pipes. And so you're pretty confident that when you dig that up,
it's not on the outside.
You won't find it. Santa Rosa did do soil testing after their fire. They were concerned about the same exact issues. They dug up a whole bunch of pipes, they dug up the soil around it, and they analyzed it, and they never found anything.
Okay.
I would just like to add one more thing to that. It's a really good question. It's a really important issue, and it's one of the things that we're focused on is to make sure that when we're executing this plan, that we don't inadvertently cause damage to the area where we're cleaning up, right? So it's the whole first do no harm. So that is part of the reason for some of the isolation work and for going through the system in a very careful, stepwise manner so that we don't inadvertently contaminate an area that isn't contaminated, whether it's pipes or soil or water or air.
Well,
right? We want to make sure that we don't cause more contamination while we're trying to clean up the contamination we're dealing with. Excellent question.
Thank you, babe. One more question. So I do have a well. I don't have insurance. My lot is clean. Can you help me hook up my well to my trailer? It's an honest question. No?
Our responsibility stops at our meter.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Since it's been about 140 days since a fire, and you've sampled 400 water samples, is less than 4 a day a reasonable amount to expect from PID? You've only sampled 400 samples, correct? It's been 140 days. That's less than 4 times a day that you're sampling water. Is that a reasonable amount to expect?
Well, it is not if you're looking at it in a timeline like that. But there was time spent that we actually had to repressurize the system. We had to get water back in the system before we could start sampling the system. In order to do that, we literally had to fill 172 miles of pipe and repair a lot of the leaks that were occurring before we could keep the water system pressurized. So there was quite a period of time involved just in repairing and repressurizing the system so we could get to the point of sampling. The plan and the progress of that plan includes considerably more than what we've been able to exact.
At this time, how many are you doing a day?
Well, it depends on it, but we've done up to 53 was our best day when we set them up like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With regards to that question, which was great, Santa Rosa did 8,222 samples in 1 year. That's what it took them. And they had 5.2 miles of pipe. When I, in Manhattan College and the other folks at Purdue showed up, PID had lost staff. 30 out of 36 of their workers had homes burned. And so when I showed up, I actually asked the same exact question. Like, so what's going on here? Why aren't we sampling? And it became very clear to me that there was no water in many of the pipes, so you can't sample air. And so PID is going through something that I have never seen before, and you all are going through it too. And maybe you definitely don't have enough information. And so I would say asking those questions, is this enough sampling? As I mentioned about a month ago, you are probably about to see a military-like logistical operation take place up here on the ridge. You are going to see a lot of more samples per day, per week. You are probably going to be overwhelmed and maybe shut off the map because it will be changing so much. So I have hope that they will be doing that based on the plan that I've seen. And that's an amazing, excellent question that I asked as well. So.
I'm Mark Roberts. I was born and raised in Paradise. I'm staying here. I've been here since the fire. First of all, I'd like to say I feel really blessed, and I lost my homes. So what you folks have done is short of what people want, but still incredible. I think I was probably one of the first people in Paradise that got PID turned on. And it may be because I stayed here and I bothered a lot of people I grew up with. With that being said, I have 2 homes that I have to rebuild. I saved some of my rentals, and I expect for my renters to return. My main concern is that when I'm rebuilding my homes, I'm going to be isolated with the water that I'm going to be using for those homes and for construction purposes. But with that being said, I have pieces of property when I was a child that were orchards, cherries, apples, olives, and landscaping on my properties still is maintained in an orchard-like atmosphere, including lawns and gardens. And because the structures are gone, and I'm blessed that if you guys will, not you guys, but stop adding on to the list of things that we need to spend money on so we can rebuild, like septic systems that work and surveying your property where you know where you live. But the thing that concerns me is I have these properties and they're very nicely landscaped. The landscape didn't suffer. So am I going to be able, for instance, the piece of property that I have across the street from the Gold Nugget Museum is a memorial park to a couple retired school teachers here in town. Will I be able to maintain the use of the PID water to water those properties, separating the construction of my home from the water usage on the properties?
I think that Sammy Cater is probably wondering why I send him so many emails early in the morning asking, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? And my thought was this, and my thought was that, and can we do this? Can we do that? What if we did this and this way? And so he's going to address that, but Mark, seriously, no joke, I wake up early thinking about how do we exact that? How do we get that irrigation water there? How do we get the construction water there? Because it has to be right there at that point of use. And we know that. We're really seriously, you've got to be getting a little bit irritated with my emails. But would you please address Mark's?
Yeah, no problem. So I think we understand completely the importance of landscape irrigation to the community. And it's part of the plan, and it's a priority in the plan. So our goal is that you'll be able to maintain landscaping as much as possible, and that people will get potable water as quickly as possible. Those are both part of the goal. So it's not that the goal is to get potable water at the expense of landscaping. We understand the importance of landscaping, and that if the only thing left on your property are 2 old fruit trees, those are pretty important fruit trees. So, understood.
Yeah, and if you have an additional 4 or 5 acres that is very neatly groomed, and you've got money to replace the home, what good's a $300,000 or $500,000 home if while you're waiting for 2.5 years you lose $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 worth of landscaping?
Agree. I think also, though, we all live in the drought-stricken California, and we're all going to have to work together in terms of water conservation to be smart about what we're preserving and what we're allowing to go fallow. And I think everybody here, we've all lived through all kinds of water reduction years and things like that, and we understand that. But obviously, there's parts of landscaping that are worth saving and can be done in a responsible way with the amount of water use being done. So.
Okay, so you are going to separate the two. You are going to allow a certain amount of water to be used for outside use, separate from...
So I wish I could tell you right now, well, here's the deal. You're going to get a connection for your landscaping, and you can use that, and you're going to get this for your house. The reality is there's not going to be one size fits all because of the nature of the problem. And we're going to do certain things in certain areas and certain things in other areas to try to maintain that goal of potable water as quickly as possible, maintain landscaping as much as we can. But the answer to that question is going to depend on where you are and what that looks like with regards to the distribution system. And for some people that might be a tank, and for some people that might be a connection to an adjacent main, and for some people that might be that the main is cleared quickly. So I think I understand the frustration with the lack of specificity of the answer, and I completely empathize with you, but that's where we're at right now, and we're going to try to get more and more specific in the coming weeks and share that information. The soonest that I can put a map up on the screen that says, here's the sequence that we're going to go in, so you can go find your place on the map and figure out, plan more specifically. We're going to do that. We're going to share that information, but today I can't answer that specifically.
Okay, but
Hello. If I could just say one thing about that too. The town and PID and all the agencies here, FEMA, Cal OES, we are working every day to try to find funding sources to take care of some of the burden of the rebuilding. Obviously, we can't take care of all of it, and right now, we can't make any promises, but the mayor is going to Washington, D.C. next week to go ask. She's meeting with many federal legislators and agencies to get into their budgets and get money flowing to come to Paradise so that we can help our residents when they're trying to rebuild. So we all want our residents, our customers back. We want to rebuild the town. It is frustrating, and it is a long process. It's one of those marathons. It's something that we can't promise, but we're also working with private funders. There are banks and private funders like the Butte Strong Foundation that are going to be helping us in the coming months with some of the individual costs for rebuilding. So hang in there and know that we're working for you all the time.
So I'm just thinking a couple months ahead from now when it gets warm, you guys aren't going to let the little park at the duck pond die, right? You're not going to let the Terry Ash Park die on the Skyway. You're going to have some sort of water source so that you can maintain those, correct?
Yeah, that is one of our priorities. We understand that's one of the priorities, and we're going to work in every facet to make sure that area has water as long as possible until we have to isolate that area, stagnate the area, and test the area. So we're working hard to make sure that that water stays flowing as long as possible for that specific purpose.
Right, and 72 hours in June is an acceptable lack of water. 2.5 years isn't, though.
We understand that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Ray James from Sparger Technology Laboratories in Sacramento. We came up today to talk from a laboratory point of view for analyzing VOCs. My laboratory has been analyzing VOCs for about 30-some years in that regards. At the bench level, the technique is called what's purge and trap. That's a technique of choice. The beautiful people here in Paradise, in their knowledge, the more gets involved to help the PID, the resolution will be a lot shorter. If you all hit the Google, do some studying, you probably will find the remedy for some of your problem, especially by contributing. The doctor who's up here today is very knowledgeable in that background, but we all need help. So the few questions that I had for the panel in regards to the benzene, it has a very low boiling point. It's very volatile. It's flammable. So the gentleman who just finished talking, as the temperature rises, is going to assist in removing the benzene from your water. You can also do air sparging, using an inert gas to remove the benzene as well. We all know heat is a remedy to a lot. The few questions I had from the PID is, how is your water treated?
So we have what's called an alternative technology plant, but we pre-chlorinate, and then it goes through a two-step filtration process. Clarification first, and then a multimedia filter second.
Okay, so since you're chlorinating, are you having any problems with your trihalomethanes, your THMs?
We aren't yet. We are afraid that could become a problem as water age becomes an issue. Fortunately, right now we have enough service lines and stuff still leaking in town that we're moving enough water through.
As far as carbon goes for the homeowners, the gallons per minute is extremely important to know when your carbon is spent. It's the most important factor. Carbon and benzene is a six-membered ring. 6 carbons in the ring is very stable. But like dissolves like, and carbon likes carbon. So if you know the amount of gallons per minute is going through your activated carbon, you'll have an intuitive understanding of when that carbon is spent, i.e. when it needs to be rejuvenated. So my recommendation on the people who, people are going to experiment no matter what you do. So if you do use activated carbon, I think that's a great solution to get some data from, but you must be able to measure the GPM and make sure the manufacturer has an idea of how many GPMs can go through their carbon before it needs to be reactivated in that regard. And then have your water tested by a laboratory that can perform the test in the methodology that is required by the state of California. Everyone wants to take their own sample. The gentleman who so eloquently spoke earlier was talking about the protocol. It's very important, the protocol. You can't have any air bubbles in the sample. So therefore, you can't have a cup of coffee, fill up a vol vial, and maintain the integrity of the sample by not having any air bubbles at all in the sample, or the sample integrity has been violated. There's a preservative in the sample. The preservative is usually hydrochloric acid. You don't want to mix any acid in your coffee. So it's very important to make sure you have knowledgeable people like the PID who have their staff trained coming out and take the sample correctly. You also have to make sure that your water doesn't have high levels of chlorine in it, which will also make the sample integrity violated. You have to put in what's called sodium thiosulfate. You have to monitor the chlorine level in your water prior to sampling. So all these things go into play on the validity of the analytical data that you're spending your resources and your valuable time and money on to get the correct result. So the more you work with your agency, the better it will be for everyone, because then you're controlling the data. And once you control the data, then the data is more usable. But if everyone's running out, like the person had talked about, and getting a mason jar, grabbing a sample, and thinking they're going to take the sample correctly, you're wasting your time. So you want to control the integrity of the sampling prior to the sample arriving to the laboratory. Then the sample has to be maintained at a certain temperature, 4 degrees plus or minus 2. These are all EPA methodologies that must be maintained. So I just want to take a couple minutes to chat about the laboratory aspect of the protocol. And as far as running your own laboratory, like Kevin so eloquently talked about, one instrument, it's called a gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. That'll cost $100,000. 5 of them at $500,000. Then you have to have the right people trained to operate the instruments to maintain the integrity of the data. So you'll be spending more time trying to get up and running than trying to get the resolution to your problem. If it's long term, you might want a laboratory. But in the short term requirements, it's probably best to sub out the samples. We talked to the PID about bringing our mobile laboratory up here. 32-foot Winnebago Itasca. We've been running it for X number of years. Gas chromatographs, mass spectrometers in the mobile laboratory. It can sit at the PID facility. But there's a certain amount of samples you can still run inside in the laboratory. So you would only really want to run the ones that you have an idea of where the source of the contamination is coming from. You can't make benzene. It's impossible. However, the plastic pipe, only thing I've seen in 35 years of chemistry at the bench in my laboratory from plastic pipes is vinyl chloride. I've never seen benzene. It's too stable of a molecule. It's coming from somewhere. Naturally occurring? I doubt it. But something is contributing to your benzene levels. It's the needle in the haystack. Sooner or later, you're going to find it, and hopefully sooner, because as most people have talked about, you don't have 2-3 years to wait. So I want to thank you for taking the time and having me chat with you guys today and the beautiful people of Paradise. And we wish you as much success as possible in this endeavor. Thank you.
So, and thank you again. We have 8 people left with questions. Out of respect for time and everybody here, this is not going to be the last meeting, as Kevin mentioned. This group has been phenomenal tonight, so we'll take these last 8 questions and then wrap it up in the back, and then there'll be information out on the website for follow-on meetings. Thank you.
I could quickly in. I'm with my brother Ray James. Okay.
Hi, I'm Valerie Elizabeth. So I have a couple questions basically regarding fast tracking build for the people who they're going to lay down a house as fast as possible and maybe as fast as you guys. So you're saying that you want the sprinklers will be a new addition, and then we can have an option to put a tank in until either at our expense or you provide one until the water is really back online for everyone. Is that something that can a tank run the sprinklers? Do you have, if you're giving 2,500 gallon tanks, will that run a sprinkler system? And can we actually get an occupancy certificate with a tank versus actually being connected to the city water?
So we do not have a building official here tonight. We will get that question answered for you. I will reach out tomorrow and we will get that answer.
Okay, and then my next question is in regards to the meters. The gentleman earlier asked about spending the $21 and change for the next however long to avoid that amount. But what I've been hearing is that the meters are a problem. And so if you're going to be replacing the meters, if they're going to have to be removed, and we're going to have a new meter anyways, why are we maintaining paying on this meter that's not going to be able to be used? And are we then going to have to be charged for the new meter that you guys need to bring in because the old meters were contaminating?
Yeah, I can answer that. Currently, there you go. Okay. Currently, no one's going to pay for a new meter. So no matter if you get a pull there, if you don't get a pull, you're not going to pay for a new meter. The pulling of the meter and putting it back in, that's time and materials of the person going out there and doing it. With a 21, keeping the readiness to serve charge, then that meter, once it's replaced or the old meter's pulled out, a new meter will automatically be put in the ground. So there'll be no lag time between that meter and the next, and there'll be no additional charge.
So why would you need to take the meter out right now when someone turns off their water if you're not intending to do anything with it because you don't have the new meters and you don't have a plan for what they're going to be?
So one of the things that we want to do is remove the meter because we suspect that it could be a cause of the contamination. So we want to isolate as much contamination as we can. So removing that meter from that, that's the purpose of removing the meter at that point. If we are at a standing structure and we're putting water back into that at the request of the customer, then we're actually straight plumbing through so that we're reducing the risk of that contamination through the meter.
Okay, so if you want to remove the meter because you're worried about contaminants, why would we pay for that meter to stay there?
So I think it's semantics, okay? So what we have is we have a disconnection charge. That means that you are no longer connected to the service. That property is no longer connected to the service. So we're going to come out and take that meter, and we're not going to put a new meter in until that person comes back and pays for that meter to be reinstalled into that property. The readiness to serve charge is you're going to have connection to that, and when we get a brand new meter, we're just going to go throw that meter in. There's going to be zero additional charge for that, and you will never have lost service from the district. Our policy states that if you disconnect from the service, then you no longer have to pay any charges, but you no longer have a meter or availability of water to that property until you pay to get it reinstalled.
Okay, thanks.
I just was standing up here really with my brother Ray James, who we decided to make the trip to bring some assistance, but I would like to know if there's others, companies or businesses, and I think the people would like to know that are here that can speak on some of the problems that you might have in figuring out the benzene problems in the future or in your future meetings.
From a business standpoint, we're trying to bring in as many resources as we can to understand the benzene issue and the contaminant issue. Also, like I said, we are looking at mitigating this problem into the future. So that's going to be about the rebuild, about what kind of material we put back into the ground, what kind of meters we have when we put those meters back into the ground. So that's the mitigating factor. And then from just the subject matter experts, we brought Purdue out for this meeting for that specific purpose. And then we are looking at other subject matter experts to bring in. I mean, you guys are a great resource, and we continue to talk to you guys, obviously. And we're looking for, from a lab standpoint, we're looking to use as many labs as possible that are within a reasonable distance.
And I think that's a good effect because the residents at the end of the day, I realize that they just want to get back in their homes, and having as many people out here to kind of answer your questions is really the reason why we made the trip. So we want to thank you for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you very much for all the free water and the exercise that we get hauling it out of the car and stacking it and hauling it in the house and then hauling out the empties, and it's a wonderful thing. We do appreciate it. A couple of things. We did test the water through FGL. It took a month to get the results back. It was to have taken less time than that, but did extensive testing, not just benzene. And according to this, there's not a thing in the world wrong with the water in this particular house. It is an older house and has what kind of pipes? Galvanized pipes. So it was tested. I drew the samples myself. They gave me all of the containers and which ones you fill so it bubbles and you got no air and all of that stuff. So having done this, and it's 4 weeks old now, but there's nothing wrong with the water according to this report. I feel better about taking a little bit hotter shower, would not drink it, would not cook with it, would still use bottled water. What are the odds, or how will I know if the water is not as good as this report says in the future? And our meter, it's not covered with a plastic cover. It's an older house. It's a concrete thing.
So with regards to how do you know if that one water sample, I suspect, one water sample?
Oh no, it was like a dozen or more bottles with different chemicals, because I didn't test just for benzene. This report cost $490.
Yes.
And took a month to get. But I saw no point in testing only for benzene.
Mm-hmm.
So
one of the issues is that, and I will tell you this because I called the laboratory the other day and asked them what to test for, and they told me benzene, that's what everybody else is testing for. And I said, okay, where should I test? And they said, your kitchen sink.
Right.
I said, oh, that's interesting. Why? And they said, well, that's where everybody else is testing. And how much will that be? And they gave me a quote. And so I understand your frustration because the same question I asked, you just asked, I asked them.
Did you ask these people FGL?
I did not. No,
okay.
I did not talk to them. But the bottom line is somebody needs to step in and tell people how to do testing and where to test to know if what's happening is appropriate.
I felt competent to draw the water myself after it was thoroughly explained to me. For $30, they would have come and done it. But, like I say, it was a whole mess of bottles and containers and vials and everything, but I followed very closely exactly what he said. So apparently what I drew was okay. But it is very complex. It's not, you don't just turn the spigot on. And let the water come out.
And there's, I always link this back to my family. If my mother can do it, then it's all good. So I would talk things through with her, and sure. She does things that are very effective. And so it may not be the sample. It may be that there's nothing there. But the next question is, so is that it? Or do I need to worry about something else? And for me to talk to you about that, I would need to know where you live. I would need to know where you live on the water main system and that type of stuff.
Section C, directly across from Billy Park.
So we can, I'm around, you can talk with me
I'll
and I'll catch up with you. But
okay.
What we're trying to do too is help set up some sort of program to train. Now this is something that Purdue and Manhattan College and some others are trying to do, to teach people how to sample. I had somebody call me the other day that said that I did it all right. I took the powder, I put it in, I put a little water in, I did what they said, I closed it and I shook it up, then I opened it and I put a little more water in and found out that it all dissolved, and then my benzene only came back 0, so everything's good, right? And so this is the types of questions that maybe nobody is addressing, but need to be addressed to help you. So
yeah, it would be good to know those things. Another question is, there's the main house and there is a rental unit that is separate from the main house that when it gets back together again, if there's a need for this tank, is it one tank for the house and one tank for the other unit? How does that work?
I think what we're really talking about is if you what your service connection is. So if your meter serves both, then the tank would serve both.
Then the tank would serve both.
I would add to that, though, that again, it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. And if one meter is serving 8 people living in 2 structures, we might have a different system serving that, so that we made sure that there was enough water for those people during the time that they were without water from the distribution system. So
okay.
we're going to try to be very sensitive
Sure.
to each individual situation, because we understand that we might cover 90% of the conditions of what service and a line to a house and a house looks like with a plan. And then there's going to be 10% that aren't exactly that we're going to have to go out and talk to people and understand their specifics and make an adjustment. And so I think there's some sensitivity to the fact that not everything's cookie cutter.
Right. And so can we come and talk to you at PID?
Yes, and part of that too is in the registration process. That's part of the reason we're wanting to do the registration process. That data we collect there will help us in those particular decisions and what that looks like.
Okay, and the only other thing is, early yesterday morning before the sun came up, I was leaving, and I did call PID yesterday morning as I was leaving Paradise, the intersection of Oliver and Billy. It's not a geyser, but there's water somewhere because the road is never dry, even after all the rest of the road from the rain is dry. Something's leaking somewhere. It's making the road wet.
Hi. First of all, I'm glad you explained to all of us the manpower shortage that you're dealing with. It helped to have some more compassion and appreciation for the humongous job you're having to perform. And I have to say, I'm so impressed with a lot of the people that have come to the mic because they've been very intelligent. Now, having said that, here's the unintelligent person coming to the mic with my dumb question. So we don't live in the house. We haven't turned on the water. We made sure at some point, months later, we had the meter turned off. The only kind of thing we've done in the house at all was flush some toilets. And I want to know, did we contaminate the house? Because we were very careful not to have any water, turn anything on, so no contaminated water would come into the house. But then I flushed the toilet. Did I just screw myself?
Did you have your meter still turned off?
I think at that point it was turned off.
And you had water in your toilet?
There was water in the toilet, yeah. I mean, we poured water in.
The lucky thing is I'm also a wastewater engineer. So I understand toilets too. Because the toilet was just taking water and flushing it out. Mm-hmm. So as long as you were closed at the service, you didn't draw anything in.
Okay, because what we did is we took rainwater or we brought in water, dumped it in the toilet. Oh, thank God. So good. Now,
the only thing I disagree with is your first statement about not being smart.
All right, but I really would like you to know that as an average homeowner, not some of these brainiacs that have been coming up to the mic, the amount of information we've had to learn and digest, I mean, the water has been the last thing I've been, trying to figure out. It's mind-blowing, and what I'm present to is that you guys are so in the matter, and I don't think you realize the level of information you need to disseminate. I think whatever level of information you're giving to us, you need to 100 times that. Because I don't have the resources to educate myself like you do. You have consultants that come in, and I talk to my neighbors, we try to share information, but it's overwhelming. And you say come into our office. That's a bad suggestion. There's nobody there to talk to you. So if you're going to hire somebody who's a maniac at communication, not like a politically correct communicator, please. Like somebody who's just spouts every little detail that they digested. Could you do that for us, please?
We'll do our best, but the communication's going to be much more frequent, and meetings like this will be much more frequent.
Thank you.
I actually have a pretty similar question to that one. In line with your driveway analogy, we have a standing home at the bottom of the driveway. And as we evacuated, we did turn off our water at the main, and at some point it was turned back on by a mystery person. So now the water's flowing, and should we turn it back off? Or has that ship sailed? Especially as you begin cleaning the driveway.
Yeah, it concerns me how that happened. I mean, because we were specifically going through and shutting off all service connections initially. Yeah. And then when we went back to return to actually activate, we were activating our side but leaving the customer's side off. Yeah. And allowing the customer to make that decision to turn that on. That didn't always happen. I don't know how.
Yeah.
So I'd like to address that a little bit. The analogy of cleaning the driveway, where if you're at the bottom of the driveway, you get a bunch of unclean material coming to you, we are working to refine that, and that's the prioritization of getting clean water to standing structures, and the isolation of the system into small subzones, so that we can go and test and find clean areas that we can connect and make a new clean, artery and veins and capillaries to the people that are here living, and do that in a way that we're not moving contaminants from dirty zones into clean zones. So we're doing our level best to not wash everything downhill in that analogy. And we all search for these analogies because these are incredibly complex problems that nobody has faced. And I've been doing this for 25 years almost. And it's a very difficult problem, and so to come up with a simple analogy is difficult also. But we're doing our best to not have contamination move from one zone to another, from one place to another, and contaminate a place that isn't contaminated. Now, whether you should leave your service on or leave your service off, I think we'll come out with positive direction on that soon. But you have to balance the advantages of leaving the service on in terms of being able to have sanitation in your house. And
we're not home yet.
You're not home yet. Versus turning it off.
So should we just turn it
If
off?
you're not home yet, I would say to turn it off.
Okay.
You don't need it there, I would
Yeah.
Okay, because I wasn't sure if it's already contaminated, so.
But you're certainly not going to make it worse by turning it off if you don't need to use the water, right? So I think if you're not home, I didn't understand that in the question. If you're not home, I would turn it off. But if somebody is home, if somebody's out there with this exact same question who is home, I don't, from what we know right now, one house using water isn't moving water in the system to any great degree compared to all the leaks and other things that are going on in the system. So, and it doesn't increase or decrease, I don't think, the odds of that house becoming contaminated or not contaminated.
Okay.
From what we know now.
I will just add to your benefit and the benefit of everyone else, if you have that concern and you want to do that, there's generally speaking a customer side valve that you can operate to shut that off. But you can also make the request to PID. They'll put it on a service order, and we'll actually come out and shut the PID side off. We can lock, almost always, lock our side off so an inadvertent turn on doesn't happen, right? So if you want that, request that through PID. We'll come out, turn our stop off, and lock it out.
Just close the valve. You just close the valve. There's a valve in the box, you just close it.
Well, we'll shut it off. The integrity of the plumbing system in the house will determine whether water stays in the house or not, if I understood your question properly. Oh. I think that would be a preference of the homeowner.
There's a lot of expertise up here who would probably like to have a 10, 15-minute discussion about that.
Right.
Because there's, you know, I'm sitting here thinking, well, if you open the valves, it's not really going to empty the lines, because the lines feel to get a little bit of water out of them, but there's water still in the lines, and if it's contaminated, it depends on the pipe material, and you know, how engineers maybe don't know.
There's that maniac information she was looking for. There you go, that communication. Just keep going.
So I think I don't think we have a right answer to that. You know, there's probably some issues on both sides. Andy, I don't know if you had thoughts immediately also.
So I'll just say, if you don't need water in your home right now, shut it off. Don't bring it in, because there's no reason to do that unless there's some structural issue with your plumbing that will collapse on itself, or you got really old pipes or something like that. But anyways, I mean, that's what I've been telling people, is if they don't need it, don't bring it in.
The question was whether or not to try to drain it after you shut it off.
Well, that's, you know, you could, just like people have summer homes and in winter areas where they drain the pipes in the winter, right, so they don't freeze and burst. I mean, people do that. You could do that too if there's water in there.
Well, we could end up having to be pushed back home any week now as insurance pressures. And so I guess my wonder is, like, we do have our landscape still there, and as we push into the drier months, and if the water's still on, I don't know. I guess I'm just wondering if the contamination level is going to change.
It could. So if you have a leak in your house, then it would be a slow movement of water all the time from the service line up into the building. So if you don't have a leak in your house, then, and if you have irrigation, then you would basically use that water for irrigation, and it shouldn't go into your house. It would be diverted. Based on your plumbing, you'd probably want a plumber out there to take a look at it.
I think what I'm hearing, though, is we do need to develop guidance for these kinds of questions, because they're good questions, and there's a lot of issues that I think we need to go through as a group to come up with sort of a communication sheet that says, if you're moving back, consider these things, and here's your options, and here's our suggestions. If you're not moving back yet, here's what we suggest, and we'll look at those things, because they're great questions. We have a tendency to sort of dive into the details. There's a lot of people up here that deal in details all day, but doing it in front of the whole crowd maybe isn't the most effective way to do it. So we'll try to get answers to you.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to thank everybody for being here. You've done a wonderful job. I wanted to ask, if you're running water through your pipes, how long does it take to get rid of the benzene?
Depends.
Okay.
It depends on what types of pipes you have. And so for the high-density polyethylene service lines that are in PID,
yes,
if you ran your water at 2 gallons per minute, you could be running it for 160 days straight to get the level of contamination down to a level at which it doesn't pose a health risk. Or your line's not contaminated, or it's kind of contaminated, and you can get it out in 5 days. So it really depends on what the material is, and that's it.
Now, what if you turned on everybody's water and you made it mandatory they had to have a filter system, and you checked it for the next 3 years?
If you installed filters on every
whole house filter.
Right. So so the DDW, the Division of Drinking Water, does not approve of whole house filters for creating potable water.
Okay.
It is out there. That's the position, and the reason why it's positioned is because of the federal law that says for VOC contamination, you shall not do this. And so the reason why people haven't done this, and the reason why you probably haven't seen people rush in at federal and state and local levels recommend that, is because the law says that shall not happen.
And there's a bunch of reasons for that I'd love to go over with you.
Well, we had a whole house filter put on, and they claim it does miracles. So the bottom line is we're going to have the water tested, of course, and we'll see what it really does. But if it does what it says, then I would come back and say, why wouldn't this company put the filters on?
In regards to whole house filters in Flint, when they had their lead contamination,
Yes.
they used faucet filters, right? Because they had 90,000 people that had unsafe water. And so those faucet filters are tested against certain standards, not for what was found in Flint. And so there was studies that were commissioned, rapid ones, to figure out how they worked and whether they worked or not. I don't doubt that activated carbon filters will have some type of effectiveness against VOC contamination in the water. The question is, how long will they last, and when will breakthrough occur, and will you know it if you're not sampling?
Well, I'm not, I don't mean a little faucet filter. I mean a big, large filter.
Right.
And that's what we had put on. We're going to give it a try and see how it comes out. If it comes out fine, I'll bring down the survey to you and show you.
So I love data. So if anybody has water testing, if you install the system and then you test it, contact me, send me the data. You know, because the only way for people to know what you're finding is if you tell somebody.
Sir. And your name is?
Andy Welton.
Thank you, Andy.
And your contact information?
AWHELTON@purdue.edu, and it's not the chicken company. It's PURDUE.edu. So you can look me up, Google, you talk to somebody here, and they can track me down.
Thank you. Thank you.
Andy, what you were saying, if you wrote that article, if I understand right, is the water being filtered from PID in may be clean, but the concern that is that the piping inside the house is contaminated, which that filter will do absolutely nothing for. Am I right?
That's correct. So if your plumbing is contaminated and you install a whole house filter, you basically have clean water going in, which causes the leaching because the contamination likes to leach into clean water. So it leaches into clean water and becomes dirty water and then is delivered. But the issue of the scale of that is unknown because there's been no commission testing, even though people have been recommending it for a long time.
Hey, I was speaking with the gentleman from Sacramento, Ray, and briefly we discussed his take on, I guess, on benzene and whether it leaches into plastic piping. He was stating you can't make benzene. So a suggestion he was asking, he was brainstorming with me is for PID to do their own test with their pipes. So take their pipes, heat them up, run their test and see if there's any VOCs that come back positive or negative on that, and also running a test with a carbon filter in their plastic piping as well. And then he was also bringing up whether or not the VOCs are they in fact coming from the melted plastic, or are they from gas lines or some other source?
So
Is there anything being done about that yet?
There's a little bit, hello? There we go. When we start talking about plastic, there's different kinds of plastic, right? And I think what you're talking about the gentleman that was over here.
Yeah.
But he was talking about, and he said the only thing I've ever seen leach out of plastic is vinyl chloride. PVC pipe is polyvinyl chloride pipe, which would leach vinyl chloride. The suspicion, and I think it's been confirmed through testing, both here and in Santa Rosa, is that the source of the benzene was likely some of the high-density polyethylene pipe, which is the plastic pipe that goes from the big pipe in the street, comes up to your house,
right?
Which is a small diameter HDPE or high-density polyethylene pipe, or some of the polyethylene or other types of plastic parts that are in the meter, the flow meter. And so I think that from other times and from some of the testing that's been done, there's a reasonable understanding that that's the likely source of the benzene. Are those portions of the system?
I guess to follow up on that, has PID conducted that test to confirm that with their own equipment and meters?
The The benzene, back in the 1900s, and I'm going to get to today quickly. In the 1900s, they didn't have much analytical equipment. So what they did was they took PVC pipe and they threw it in an oven, and then they analyzed the gases that came off it, and they found benzene. So they said when you heat up PVC pipe really hot, benzene comes off, and it's basically, it starts falling apart. Here, PID hasn't conducted any tests to burn HDPE pipe or to burn PVC pipe to see if that's what's coming off. A lot of people in some universities have talked to us and said, yeah, that has to happen. That'd be great, right, for the next fire, or for this one. So nobody's done that yet. With regards to HDPE, these black plastics that you can find at home supply stores, they haven't been confirmed to be degraded as the source. They've been confirmed to have contamination. Whether it started there or it started over here, and then when the water stopped, it went into that pipe and then became a secondary source. There's a couple theories out there, but nobody's kind of nailed this down.
Okay.
And Santa Rosa didn't nail it down.
Yeah, sure.
They had some testing.
Or they're kind of the first, so
yes.
Hopefully we're the last. But is it within the framework to conduct something like that, though?
That is not, to my knowledge, in their recovery plan.
I think the focus is on...
Or to see if it was from another source. It just seems kind of weird that it's so sporadic, since it's a gravity-fed system, and if it was benzene in the damaged arteries or capillaries, that it would be flowing all down. So it's kind of weird that it would be the capillaries.
Somebody needs to figure that out.
Yeah.
From a recovery standpoint, from a FEMA interaction and state level interaction, they're more about what pipes are bad, how do we rip them out, do we put new ones in, what do we do with the people today?
I gotcha. Yeah.
I think from a planning perspective, yeah, somebody needs to do that. Somebody needs to burn pipes and check out what comes off.
Cool. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great question.
My name is Alvin Ballison, and I want to thank you all for how much time you put into getting water back to us. I work for a nursery here in Paradise, Menden's Nursery, and I've been with them for over 20 years, and I've been in the nursery business for better than 40. I just want to mention to most of you here, we're going to have to rethink, all of you are going to have to rethink about your watering of your landscaping. With water being as scarce as it is, you're going to find that plants don't really need water every day. And I think one suggestion that would be one thing that would be a help to you is if you water your plants real good, mark it on the calendar, and then see how long that plant takes to wilt. Then you need to know that you should have watered it one day sooner. And that would not only save water, but it would be less expensive for you. And the plants would appreciate it. And so I just wanted to give that information. And thank you.
My name is Troy Farlinger. We were talking about being downhill. Well, I'm downhill. And my question is, we're talking about trying to get all the infrastructure repaired. My water has not been turned on in my house. I talked to a PID individual in the truck right there near my house. He said they will be installing shut-off valves because we don't have any. Or at least most of them on our street don't. And to leave the water off until that's been completed. The water was turned off the day of the fire by a neighbor. So with everything that's going on, all the major progress is going to start at the top. Would it be the plan to get the people at the bottom the furthest away from getting things done, to get them some tanks, and get us back to be able to live in our house. I mean, we're living in our travel trailer at our house.
That's a very good thought. I mean, we're still developing the plan, and that's a very good input to the plan.
Thanks.
Okay, I just want to thank everybody for sticking around. Great questions. I knew there was a lot of questions out there. We wanted to leave a lot of time for those questions, and hopefully we answered them to the best of our ability. I also want to say thanks to the support of the town of Paradise. We are all one. We service the same population, the same customer base, and we are standing as one through this process. And so both of us are determined to make Paradise rebuilt again. And so we are working hand in hand together to do that. So I just want to thank the town of Paradise for all their support. And thank you guys for all your support, and have a good night.